Hello everybody and welcome into my latest live broadcast. It is Friday. It is the 3rd of February 2023. My name is Kerry Holzman and thank you guys so much for watching. Very busy week. A lot of clients were calling me this week. People I haven't heard from in months all decided to call me on Monday, and I've been working all week to get through all of the really strange issues that suddenly cropped up out of the blue. One of which is still ongoing, and we can talk more about that later. Today I have a video for you reviewing this new Sabrent USB Type-C docking station that will hold pretty much any kind of storage device used by consumers today, which includes 2.5 and 3.5 inch hard drives, solid state drives, and M.2 SATA, I believe SATA and NVMe both, as well as working as an offline cloning station, meaning you can just plug this into the wall, don't plug it into a computer at all, and clone from an M.2 drive to a hard drive or solid state drive or vice versa. The size of the target must be minimum the size of the source drive because it will copy every sector. So the larger the drive, the longer the clone will take, regardless of how much data is actually on the drive. It's not an intelligent clone like cloning software would do for you, which would be much faster in most cases. However, the convenience of this to just push a button and walk away from it and have it done when you come back can't be denied, along with the fact that this works great as a potentially as a data rescuing tool where a system dies, won't turn on anymore. Could be a laptop, could be a desktop, could be 10 years old, could be relatively new, and you want to pull the data off of the internal storage, whether that's M.2 SSD, 2.5 inch, 3.5 inch, or hard drive, 2.5 inch or 3.5 inch. So it's all in one tool right here. We're going to check that out and verify it. I wanted to get a modern wireless adapter, so Maximum PC Magazine highly recommended this Netgear AC1900 as one of the fastest. But this thing's a monster. As you can see, I bought a returned product, and there's some things I don't like about this. I'm going to start moving away from Netgear if they keep going in this direction, and we'll talk more about that during today's show. And of course, I'm interested in talking to you guys in the chat room with whatever's on your mind and technical questions, preferably, and other things that are going on. We'll talk about the upcoming, or has it already happened, where Microsoft is no longer selling Windows 10 licenses direct anymore. We'll talk some more about that and why that's not a big deal. And this happens every time a new operating system is, there's an overlap between the previous operating system and the new operating system. So for example, when you were running Windows Vista, you could have also been running Windows 7. And as Windows Vista was getting close to end of life, Microsoft stopped selling licenses for Windows Vista about 2 years prior to its end of life. When you were running Windows 7 and Windows 8 came out, there's an overlap where you could have had either operating system, and then about 2 years before Windows 7 reached end of life, Microsoft stopped selling licenses to Windows 7. From Windows 8 to Windows 10 up until recently, you could have been running either one of those. A couple of years ago, Microsoft stopped selling licenses to Windows 8.1. This is just the more of the same history repeating itself. This is obviously standard operating procedure for Microsoft in how they market their products. Third-party sellers will still have licenses to sell. It's just that when their inventories run out, likely you won't be able to get it anymore. And that's the way it's always been. Go all the way back. It's just nothing new here. Let's see, what else? Bunch of people saying hello in the chat. Let's say hello to folks joining us in the chat room tonight. We have, hold on a second, I have to get my screen set up here properly. Oh, a bunch of friends in blue, a bunch of members joining us here in chat. Welcome in, everybody. So good to see everyone. It feels like forever since I've made a video, because the last public video I made was last Friday. It's a tough balance. I'll tell you, at times it can be very difficult to balance the day job of actually servicing customers, fixing their computer and technical issues, and then the YouTube stuff, which is, YouTube's very demanding. So the good news is I'm fresh as a daisy and not so not so burned out with too much video content or too much criticism that comes from it. Peter Laycock, our good friend Buster, contributes 50 pounds in Super Chat. He says, good evening, Gary, and everyone in the chat from Bonnie, Scotland. Hey, Peter, rather Buster. Good to see you, my friend. I also see that Conleth Byrne has extended his membership another month. Right on. Thank you, Conleth. And Kevin Dara with a $20 Super Chat contribution. And Kevin sent me a PayPal for $25 yesterday, and he said, this is for today's show. And I'm like, I don't have a show on Thursday. Well, sometimes I do, but I didn't yesterday. So I guess he realized he was a day off, and he emailed me, and he says, I want to apologize for that. I was thinking it was Friday. He says, I know YouTube takes 30% of any of the Super Chats, so I wanted to send it via PayPal. And like you, I work 7 days a week, and after a while, the days just run into each other. Oh, I know. He says, I'm very much looking forward to today's presentation. I'm from a four-generation military family, and I really appreciate what you do for the vets of this country. My great-great-grandfather was in World War I. My grandfather was in World War II and Korea. My father is a Vietnam vet, and I was in during Afghanistan, and now my daughter is serving in the Air Force. Holy cow, wow, family of service. That's awesome. Thank you again for all you do, not only for the community, but for the channel and the subscribers. FYI, I lived in Phoenix. I've lived in Glendale, Peoria. He says, think of my wife when you roll up I-17 and smell all that steak on Friday, Saturday night coming from the Roadhouse, the Outback Steakhouse, and Bobby Q's. They were some of our favorite places to go, among many others. He says, my first days of computers was with an old Apple IIe and a Texas Instruments TI-99 4A, and I've loved it ever since. I found your channel when doing a search for the Miniforum 690HX, and from the day I found that video, I've subscribed to your channel. I'm a paid member, and I've enjoyed many hours since watching your videos. Again, I really appreciate someone who's such a strong supporter of our veterans, the community, and working with children that have special needs. No need to reply. I know your time is valuable. I just wanted to write and say thanks for all you do. Take care. Have a great weekend. And that's Kevin Dura, who says he's also known as Radio Galore. He's an RF engineer by trade, and he works with radio TV stations as a consultant and a repair technician. Right on. Well, Kevin, thank you so much. This viewer came from out of nowhere, starts contributing very generously, regularly, I was like, wow, someone just found me. I've been doing this since 2008, and not everybody appreciates the style of this channel. The style of this channel is sort of a combination of a classroom setting and a combination of just people, friends, getting together to hang out with nothing on the agenda, right? Some people, they just can't get this concept through their mind. But if you were to meet me at a bar, it wouldn't be like, hey, when are we going to get to the topic we're going to talk about, Carrie? Like, who does that? I've never done that in my life. So it's not a business meeting. It's friends gathering for sort of a virtual, social public house, pub. That's what I'm trying to create here. Well, at the same time, I'm also trying to teach. Some people don't get that either. When I encourage the audience to provide me with answers that I don't want to Google while I'm live, what I'm actually trying to get you to do is to do the work so that you can better understand the process to more or less include you in the discovery process and solution process. And some people are like, you're too lazy to go look up the answers yourself. Yeah, I can't do this. It's too much work. So some people just don't get it. I appreciate that all of you do. We have an amazing community, and thank you for all of you for being a part of it. Now, in front of me, this is part of what I was doing this week. I had a couple of really old machines that I needed to break down and put into e-waste or recycling, depending on what it was. So this is old. This is an old AMD Athlon. The text on this is so tiny. I'll tell you what, how about I just bring it to the camera and you guys can tell me what it is. How about that? You're too lazy to read it. Yeah, we'll just go with that. I'm too lazy. I can't be bothered. No, actually, it's very fine print, and I think you looking at it full screen, you're going to be able to see it better than I can. Oh yeah, that's way better. So typically when I break these boards down, I have to make sure they're destroyed. Best Buy, when I worked there, we used to have a crusher, and anything that was being thrown away, any product, had to be physically destroyed. And this assured nobody was running a scam by saying, oh, this is broken, I'll put it in the trash. Then they come around after the store is closed and they take it out of the trash and bring it home. So for tax purposes, the IRS requires, at least that's my understanding, the IRS requires that what you are writing off isn't given to somebody else to benefit from while you're writing it off. So it gets physically destroyed. So in this case, like I'll rip all these capacitors off the board, the batteries out of it. I'll save the CPU. I've got a collection of CPUs going all the way back to 286, or I might even have an 8088 in there. Maybe an 8086. But I've got a drawer full of CPUs. And I used to sell a load of these, a lot. A lot of people think I'm an Intel fanboy, but I'm actually a profit fanboy. I call it what you will. I like to stay in business. I'm a little biased that way. And Intel just wasn't not having very good value for my clients. So in this era, I sold a lot of Athlon XPs back in the day and very rarely sold Intel. Now, it didn't start that way. It started with sort of a 50-50 mix, I'd say, of Intel and AMD. But you know, back then we also had Texas Instruments was making chips. 486, 386 compatible chips. So was Cyrix. I'm trying to think of some of the other folks. Of course, AMD. And what the manufacturers would do, what the competitors to Intel would do, is they'd call their chips 386 and 486, right? And Intel sued them. They said, that's our 386. That's our trade name. You can't use that. And the judge told Intel, you can't trademark a number. So when the 586 was getting ready to come out, Intel had a contest for the employees to name the new chip. They needed a copyrightable, trademarkable name that wasn't a number. And one of the employees came up with the word Pentium. And I recall I submitted some suggestions back in the day. And I think that employee got like $200. I don't know. They didn't get much. And that name has been around now for a very long time. And now competitors can't call their chips Pentium, right? So AMD would say it's a 586. AMD kept the numbers going for a while. And then when Intel moved to the Core Duo series, that's when Intel became a better chip to buy than the AMD offerings. And then AMD was left behind for about 10 years. Kind of forgot about them, quite honestly. They weren't even worth considering. And Intel changed their naming convention to be more like BMW. So you have the i3, the i5, the i7, and now the i9. So because they have the letter I in front of it, they can trademark that apparently. It's not just numbers. Or maybe they can't, because BMW's 335i or 535i, it's got the I on the opposite side of the number. Then, of course, the bigger the number is, the more luxurious and more expensive the car is, right? So the BMW 3 Series is your entry-level luxury sports car. i5 is your mid-range luxury sports car. And the 7 Series, they call it 7 Series, 5 Series, 3 Series BMWs. And Intel very much took inspiration from that model. Audi does the same thing, right? Audi has the A4, et cetera, that lower the number, the cheaper and more entry level the car is. And the higher the number, the more expensive and more enthusiast level the car is. Whereas Mercedes will use letters, the C-Class, E-Class, et cetera. And the higher up you go in the alphabet, the more expensive the car gets. I mean, just look at the price for a G-Wagon. Okay, so I save these chips. I put them in a drawer because at some point someone's going to go, holy crap, I can't believe you still have one of those. That's 50 years ago. They'll probably say that at my grave because I'll probably be dead then. But that's not the point. All right. So I was dismantling all of this. These were like HPs and compacts. I had to dismantle them And the only part I save is the chip. The RAM, I think, was 256 megs each. So it's not even worth holding on to the memory modules. This still has a parallel port on it. And this takes quite a long time. You would think that's an easy job, you know, just breaking down computers. It takes, well, first of all, they're jammed full of dust. So the first thing I need to do is blow them out, because otherwise it gets everywhere. But it takes me about 90 minutes to fully break down an old machine for recycling. I remove every single screw. You'll even see every heatsink on the motherboard has been removed. I'm very, very thorough. Even the little nuts that stick out, anything that's a screw that can be removed does get removed. Some of the screws I hold on to, some just continue on to the recycler. Most of it goes to the recycler. The cases are, can't reuse these cases. Power supplies are really super old and unusable. So all of that stuff definitely gets, the wires all cut so they can't be pulled out of the garbage and reused. And any screws that are in the power supply all get removed as well. So anybody that's gonna pull that out of the trash is gonna put a lot of work in to get it working again. And I can't even remember what was wrong with these machines to begin with, but likely there was something wrong with them physically where it didn't make any sense to put any money into repairing them. And then they sat in the garage for a couple of years until I had time to break them down. Now I have my garage space back because I've broken down a few of them, and this was just the last piece I was at. Let's see, looking back in the chat, Channel 0 says it's 7 a.m. here, 15 degrees Celsius in Australia. Well, good day to you and welcome in, and to everybody. Thank you for joining me for today's broadcast. A little ticked off though, because when I was making the link for this Wi-Fi adapter, it's on sale today. I had no idea that was going to happen, and I think the sale price is cheaper than the return price that I paid for this used item. So it's a good value for what it is, but I want to kind of go over it so that you can determine if that's something you really want or something you want to avoid. But first, I want to talk about the Sabrent USB dock. Now, I've been advocating for USB docks going all the way back to my earliest videos. They're an absolute staple of my toolkit as a tech, and mostly for upgrades and data rescuing. I've had some debate about data recovery. Oh, Kerry, if it's not a bad hard drive and all you're doing is putting it in a dock, that's not recovery. Well, from the customer's perspective, it is a recovery. From the customer's perspective, they want you to recover the data from the drive when their computer doesn't work anymore. But I've decided that that term should be data rescue, because I'm kind of on the fence. They're kind of right. Recovery implies in the industry that you're running specialty tools where the drive is not accessible through just plugging it in. But to the customer, they don't know the difference. They just know they can't get their data back. They don't need to know, nor do they typically care. So I will often call it data recovery, but I'm trying to make a habit of call it data rescue when the drive works, but something else is wrong with the system, bad power supply, bad motherboard, bad RAM. Something's preventing it from firing up, and therefore the customer can't get their data. Now, everybody should always have backups at all times so that you would never find yourself in this position to begin with. People often back up their data before an upgrade or before they're updating something, because just in case things go wrong, they make the backup. But just in case things go wrong, it should be the attitude for every minute of every day. You should always be prepared, because when things go wrong, rarely does it happen that you expected it. So we make data backups for when we least expect that we need them. You don't think, well, you know, the computer worked yesterday, it'll work today. The computer didn't have a virus yesterday, so it's not going to have a virus today. It's a very strange logic. It's like, I'm not going to get car insurance on my car because I don't get into traffic accidents, so why should I spend the money? That's kind of the logic. And then the accident happens and they go, oh, I should have got car insurance yesterday. If only that was a thing we could do. But since we can't go back and make our backup after we need it. The idea is you make it before you need it, because you don't know what tomorrow brings. None of us do. And if your data is that important, where your world is going to be destroyed and you're going to be in a fragile psychosis, what's the data worth to you? How much is that data worth to you to take a few minutes to make a duplicate copy of your data onto an external drive and disconnect that external drive and put it away? Because if the drive stays connected, then if you do get infected, it will infect all attached drives, even over a network. So you could back up to the cloud, back up to some external drive somewhere, and then but when disaster hits, whatever that disaster happens to be, you might even just accidentally delete a file. Whoopsie. It's not like you're going to go, hey, I better make that backup. I'm probably going to accidentally delete a file soon. But you should be thinking that way. Okay, I shouldn't give you any of this information if I was a pure businessman. I'd tell you stop making backups, because there's good money in it for me. And for folks like $300 data recovery, who do nothing but restore from drives where people don't have backups. And they're busy and they make good money. I might be in the wrong line of work, because I keep telling people to make backups, but the business at $300 data recovery just seems to be getting more popular. It's like a reverse psychology, maybe. I don't know. But you know what? Stop making backups and just call me and I'll charge you hundreds of dollars to recover your data, okay? It sounds good. I mean, if you can't beat them, you know what I mean? Like, if people aren't going to listen, well, tell them what they want to hear then, and I'll just take it to the bank. I don't know. I'm out of ideas. All right, so let's see. John Williams says it's 3 degrees Fahrenheit in Madison, Wisconsin today. Tomorrow it'll be in the mid-30s. We should start warming up here next week in Phoenix. I think we've been in the 40s at night, which is the week before we were in the 30s. We were reaching freezing temperatures. This week it's warming up. In fact, this weekend starts our Arizona Renaissance Festival that goes on every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday from February 4th. No, I think February 3rd or 4th. I think it starts tomorrow. I think February 4th. No, it's got to start on a Friday. I think it's February 3rd until April 4th. Yeah, so today's February 3rd. So February 3rd till April 4th, on the weekends, they run something called the Renaissance Festival. If you've never been to one, they're a lot of fun. And with the weather being like it is.
And good pickles.
Oh, yeah, they always have the pickle vendor. There'll be a guy that's got a big barrel of pickles, and he's there, shouting at people to buy the pickles, and they're usually quite funny. I remember one time this guy was like, let me put my pickle on your lips, $2. And then a couple was walking by ignoring him, and he just kind of leaned in. He went, give me your money. It's hilarious. So it's all sort of medieval times kind of a theme if you don't know what it is. And they usually have the Renaissance festivals or Renaissance fairs in, I think, practically every state in the United States. I'm not aware of any that overlap. I don't know if the vendors all keep moving around the United States or if they're different vendors. And I think they run them in other countries, don't they? So if you've never seen this, it's a lot of fun. You should definitely check it out.
And dress up.
I don't like that you have to pay to go in, though, because once you're in, it's a bunch of vendors selling stuff. So it's almost like you have to pay to go shopping. But there is free entertainment there, and people dress up in medieval outfits, and it's fun to do at least once in your life anyway. Nick Savage said USB-C should be standard. We're getting there. We have a very large infrastructure of USB type A, and so to remain backwards compatible, we can't just flip over to a new standard overnight. What do you think this is, Apple? Just screw the customer. This is what we're going to do, and you can all buy new stuff. So in the world of Windows, for the sake of people that have older machines and older equipment that they want to use on newer machines, the world of Windows-compatible computers doesn't move forward as dramatically as the world of Apple does, because Apple will, like, for example, in the news, somebody had an Apple iPhone 4, I think it was a 4, that they were still using. And they had plugged it in to charge it, as they did all the time. It was on the kitchen counter, and for some reason they have a camera in their house, in their kitchen. And the battery overnight exploded in the phone. The phone caught fire. Because it was on a countertop, nothing else caught fire. The family woke up, had no idea there was a fire, until one of the kids, I think it was one of the kids, went to grab their iPhone, and it was a melted blob. Now, this was just in the news a couple of days ago. And the family is warning, about leaving things plugged in overnight like this. And so the media reached out to Apple and said, what do you have to say about this iPhone 4 exploding in the flames? And I really need to read Apple's comment, because what Apple said was so insulting. But what they effectively said was, we don't expect customers to use our obsolete products. The products are not designed to be used for more than 7 years and should no longer be used after 7 years. Now, I don't recall them telling me that at the time the purchase was made. Now, I was a bit surprised that somebody's running an iPhone 4 still today. Like, I don't know what phone network they can attach it to, but I guess they could use it on Wi-Fi. And yeah, the batteries, old batteries can explode, even these supposedly good lithium-ion batteries. I have a Rick and Morty hardback book that when you open the lid, it plays audio files from Rick and Morty. And the book stopped playing audio files because the batteries that are in the cover of the book died. And I took the battery out and I put it on the counter because I was going to make an Amazon review video. And one day I heard this loud, like, firecracker. Bang! And I looked, and the little button cell battery had just combusted. It just blew up. There wasn't anything on it. Nothing was touching it. It was sitting out on a counter, and there's part of it, and there's the other part of it. It just randomly exploded. Now, because I took it out of the book, did I expose it to something? I don't know, but last I checked, books are flammable, and whoever had the idea of putting batteries in a book, in the book, it's the batteries are hidden. You have to cut through the cover to get into find the batteries. There's like two or three of these little button cells that play that audio, which is really, really novel the first 300 times you hear it when you open the cover. After that, it starts getting old. And replacement of the batteries, you have to get an X-Acto knife. You've got to cut into the cover from the inside of the book, extract the batteries, and then maybe buy some same color cardboard, or not cardboard, but that firm, what do they call that paper? That really firm, like craft paper. That's the same color. Cut it and then tape it, and sort of, hopefully no one notices too badly. You've just marred up your collector's hardcover Rick and Morty book. But anyway, yes, you need to be very careful, especially if you have an older UPS, if you have an uninterruptible power supply, and if that battery has never been changed in more than 7 years, or an old laptop you're still using, safest thing you can do is take the battery out of it. Likely you're not using the battery anyway, because at 7 years old, it wouldn't be holding much of a charge, if any. Now, some laptops won't turn on if they don't sense a battery. So, you've got to ask yourself, is it worth buying a new laptop? Is it worth going to Amazon or wherever and buying a new battery for a few dollars? Or you just want to keep risking it, where the thing just might, when it's plugged in and charging, just randomly explode. And depending on where you set it, could just set your whole house on fire, right? This family wasn't aware of the fire because there was nothing else to catch fire on the kitchen counter. There was nothing around it. But if you're charging something on the couch, or you're charging something on a stack of paper, on a stack of books, pretty much anywhere but the kitchen counter. In some cases, if it's far against the kitchen counter and you've got curtains, let's say, whoosh, that house is going up. So be aware of this. It's still happening. This was just in the news earlier this week. And the fact that a family was still using an iPhone 4, I thought was pretty newsworthy. All right, let's see. Patrick Rusaw said he had an old cell phone where the battery swelled up after 2 years of not being plugged in. Yeah, yeah, that happens as well. And Jim KJ3N says, my kitchen still has butcher block tops. Yeah, those won't catch fire. Dennis Paulson said, I'm a firefighter and I know what you're saying very well. Oh, I can imagine. I bet you have some stories. Dwayne Blackwelder says, I have the Netgear A6210 Wi-Fi USB 3.0 802.11ac dual band adapter from 2016 that I connect to my desktop PC when my regular internet goes down, and I connect it to my phone's hotspot to get back online. Yeah, well, the reason I have USB Wi-Fi adapters is when I'm working on a customer system. And let's say that's a laptop that doesn't have an Ethernet jack for me to plug into. I don't want to install any software or leave anything on the system because it's not my system. So the Wi-Fi adapters I use, you just plug them in and Windows 10 automatically loads the driver. Unfortunately, on this one, it does not do that. In fact, I bought a new ASUS 802.11ac Wi-Fi adapter. And I guess on these new faster ones, there's no drivers. There's no built-in drivers to Windows. Microsoft has no idea what you've plugged in. So they've included a CD or a DVD, whatever it is, with the drivers on it, but nobody's got CD or DVD players anymore. So you have to go online to Netgear to download the drivers. But how can I get online if I can't get the wireless device connected to the internet? Long story short, I just have a cheap flash drive and I downloaded the driver from Netgear. I put it on the flash drive. I labeled the flash drive and I stuck it in the box so that I'll have that when I need it. This thing is massive. This thing's like this big. It is not the way it looks. The picture online makes it look like a regular Wi-Fi adapter. I thought it had a USB Type-C connector on it based on the photo. But no, it's that massive. It's that, here, you know what? Let me just show it to you because I get this out of the way right now. I mean, I'm on the fence about sending it back because its usefulness requiring me to have the driver, it's very inconvenient. It does work well. It connects about 20% faster than the other Wi-Fi adapters I've got. But look at the massive size of this thing. This is like Captain Kirk's communicator, this thing. Look at this. There's your USB port. Then it comes with a little stand. Now I like that it comes with a little stand so that you can move it around for the best signal strength and you can plug that in like that. But look at how massive this is. Now, if you compare that to other Wi-Fi adapters I have, they're about that big. Maybe about that big. Not that wide and not this tall. I mean, I don't know of any computer really where you could plug that directly into a USB port without getting in the way of video plugs or other USB plugs. You almost definitely have to have the stand. And it's all USB Type A, which I thought was Type C, just looking at the picture, not reading anything about it. Now, a link for this, if you're interested, they're $48 on sale. I think these were $90, if I'm not mistaken. So Amazon's got them like 43% off today, Amazon in the US. And it's a good, fast adapter. I just don't like the size of it, and I don't like that they've included a driver disk. Because likely this driver's outdated and you wouldn't want to use it anyway, but mostly because nobody's got a DVD drive anymore. So I just had one of these cheap SanDisk flash drives here, and threw a label on it, copied the driver from the website onto this. That won't focus. There it is. And I just throw it in the box. Now, with my other Wi-Fi adapters, I just plug them in. Windows 10 recognizes them. We're good to go. So I really don't need this. I just wanted the added speed of modern Wi-Fi 6 versus Wi-Fi E. I don't think it's worth it, quite honestly. And with Wi-Fi 7 around the corner, I'm not quite sure what benefit, if 6E doesn't really have benefit for most people, I don't know what Wi-Fi 7 is going to offer other than really expensive pricing. And then this is magnetized, which is a nice touch as well, so that you can, like I've got I think it's a TP-Link Wi-Fi adapter, and it's got 4 antennas on it and a little base, but the base has no weight to it, so it just flops over. Even the weight of its own antennas, there's no magnet in it, there's no weight to it, and I hate that about it because it won't stay where I put it. The tension on the cable will cause it to tilt sideways. So this is one of those products that I think should have been smaller. I think the drivers should have been offered to Microsoft, if they haven't already, so that Microsoft knows what this is when you plug it in. Now I realize some of that would have to come through Windows Update, and you wouldn't be able to get to Windows Update until you loaded the driver. So it doesn't make any sense to get the driver from Windows Update, because that implies you don't need this if you're already getting to Windows Update. Anyway, I'm on the fence on that one. I might send it back. A link for it is in the video notes below if you want to read more about it. Is the USB dock Wi-Fi connected? No. I personally, I've never seen a Wi-Fi USB dock. I don't think such a thing exists. Byte LLC wants to know the make and model of the copper keyboard. That's made by a company called Azio, A-Z-I-O. And if you look in my video notes, you'll see down towards the bottom, there's a link to everything you see in my videos, from the Lazy Susan to the keyboards. That's my Amazon store. And there's well over 100 items in my Amazon store, including the wireless keyboard and matching wireless. Well, it's a Bluetooth keyboard, to be clear. And it's a wireless and Bluetooth mouse. The keyboard's $200, and it's made here in America. And the mouse is about $90. It's expensive. I've got the taller feet on the back of it. Stock comes with shorter feet. And if you look through my video library on keyboard reviews, you'll see the original video review I did on this back in, I want to say, December. So it's pretty unique. It's nice. I was going to send it back, but I was talked down from the ledge. And it was highly suggested that I give it more time to evaluate. So at the end of the day, I sent a couple of those keyboards back, as I said I would in that keyboard review video. And I thought, well, with the money I'm getting back, it helps justify the cost of this keyboard. And I just charged it up for the first time since the initial charge yesterday, both that and the mouse. Not because they were complaining the battery was low, but I knew I wasn't going to get a video done that day, and it occurred to me I should just charge it up. And it took a couple hours to charge, and I should be good for a few more months. Depending on how frequently you use it, obviously, will determine ultimately what your battery life is on it. They're both rechargeable. You don't put batteries in them. The batteries are all built in. And I should probably expect, the way I use this, to get about 3 months of use between charges. Although it's only been a little over 2 months, I want to say, or exactly 2 months, since I initially charged them when I received them. And they did take a while to charge. But I don't have any battery strength meter. It'll light up, I think, some color, something happens to indicate when your battery's low for the mouse or the keyboard, and you need to plug it into USB to recharge it. And it is both USB-C on the back of the keyboard. Oh, and I just knocked a foot off. So these feet just slide in on an angle. See, I just took the other one off, just because I'm picking it up by the feet instead of picking it up by the sides. And that's a little bit unique for this keyboard, unlike most keyboards. And it is Mac compatible. There's a switch on the back here to switch it from, you can run it USB. If you want to run a USB cable to it, you don't have to run it wirelessly and worry about the battery. You can run it Bluetooth, and then you can run it in a PC config or a Mac config. So, it's pretty universal for the different platforms. Taco says Android and Google are going to take over the PC OS eventually, it seems to me. Well, I mean, I don't know if you have a job and you go to work, but I can tell you that almost every major corporation that employs people is running a Windows platform at least 98% of the time. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon because they have very special needs they have to have based on their business. And it's just not going to happen anytime soon to replace that with Android and Google. Now, as a consumer, I can see consumers moving more and more to that, yes. As a creator or as an industry where you're generating a service for a customer, I think we're a long way from that being, even 50% of the market because of the cost versus benefits. So, yeah. I in this business, and one of the reasons I created the channel is I often run into consumers who have no concept of going to work and being in an office and sitting at a computer. They just only have the perspective of being a consumer without really considering where the stuff they're consuming is coming from. If all we have are consuming devices, who's making the stuff we're consuming? One of the ones I love the most, over the years, ever since I started, there's been articles about how the PC's going away and that, smartphones and tablets are replacing PCs. Once again, this is purely a consumer perspective, completely blind to what makes the world go round, which is people having jobs, earning money so they can buy things to consume. And what I suggest to people when they see these articles is that you write to the author of that article, because they're going to keep writing these articles, they're clickbait. Write to the author and ask them what cell phone or tablet did they write that article on. Yes, reading the article on a tablet or a cell phone, of course. But have you tried writing an article on a tablet or a cell phone? Now, with a Bluetooth keyboard like this, you could connect this to a tablet or a smartphone and actually properly type an article, but your screen will be itty bitty. So I don't suspect most of the people writing the articles are really looking in the mirror and analyzing what they're saying, because then they probably wouldn't be writing an article, they would be a consumer. The things that you consume on your PC and your tablet were written on a PC. Mostly. Maybe a few exceptions, but for the most part, every single thing you use on your tablet or your Android was written on a PC. So you take away the PC, where's the content going to come from? So think about it. But as a consumer, yes, most consumers are not creators. They don't need creation tools. So just keep that in the back of your mind. And unless there's another way that people creating things for consumer use that doesn't involve creation tools that like a PC, I'd like to know what that is, because I can't think of anything. Samuel says, I have a USB portable DVD drive for my computer. Yes, as do I. However, it is not convenient. I only use it when I absolutely have no choice. And two, likely the drivers that are included on that driver disk are old. You always want to go to the manufacturer's website and download the latest drivers. Don't get the drivers from anybody else. The drivers are free, and you always want the latest version. And the benefit of putting that on a flash drive is when those drivers get updated, and they will get updated, I don't have to burn a new CD. I can just simply overwrite that flash drive and always have the latest drivers available. Tim Teal joins us and says hello. Selden Bell says the newest content creation tool is ChatGPT. So ChatGPT is an AI tool BuzzFeed said they're going to let go of most of their journalists. I mean, if you want to call what they do journalists, and let ChatGPT or AI write the articles for them. That's how good it's getting. Yeah. If you don't know about ChatGPT, it's been making the news lately with how robust it is. It can design some code for you. You could put like a JavaScript in it and have it explain to you what every line of the JavaScript is doing. You can ask it to make that script more effective, more efficient, or optimize it, and it will rewrite it. But of course, AI only knows what it's told. And as people keep using and feeding it questions, any answers it doesn't have can be given to it. And over time, it builds up this large database that just gets, you think of it like a newborn baby. Newborn baby knows nothing. And start by getting it to learn to walk upright and use a bathroom and chew food and learn to speak and communicate. And that knowledge builds and builds and builds and builds, right? We all still continue to learn every day. We all do something stupid once in a while, or for me, a couple times a day, where I go, oh, I should know better, and that reinforces that knowledge. So with AI, it only has to be told once, and then the way you build from that is you give it conditions. So the AI can have multiple answers depending on how the question is phrased. And if it doesn't have the answer, that's basically noted in a way that draws the developer's attention so they know if they want to provide that information for the next time someone asks. They're going to have AI represent somebody in court as a public defender, which is interesting, and the court has allowed this as an experiment. They're having, of course, self-driving cars are using AI, and that's still pretty early in its infancy. I'm more excited about AI than anything about VR. Like, I never got into virtual reality, never saw the appeal of it. Everybody was talking about VR this and VR that back when I was doing videos for Newegg. They wanted me to talk about VR. I said it's a very niche thing. It's not going to catch on. I mean, somebody's going to have to come up with the killer app for VR to just be ubiquitous, and it's never happened. And some of the VR headsets that were around back a few years ago, those companies don't exist anymore. So what did they have? The HTC Vive and the Oculus Rift. And that's all everybody could talk about. Now everybody's talking about AI, and specifically with deepfakes, ChatGPT. But in this case, my attitude is, oh, this is going somewhere. Yeah, this is something to talk about, because this is only going to get better and used by companies that are going to try and save money by letting people go that they can just replace them with AI. It's already somewhat happened. I'm sure you've been in a support chat room. Most recently, this company called Surfshark is a VPN provider. And what Surfshark will do is they'll make some really ridiculously cheap offer. You can get Surfshark VPN for some ultra low price for 3 years. But after 3 years, you get the regular price, and it's on a subscription, but you won't be billed. So you pay the initial upfront cost with a credit card, and they put that credit card on file to auto bill you 3 years from now to continue. So I had Surfshark, and it was very slow whenever I used it. It bottlenecked my internet connection. And I was happy with it, apart from how slow it was. And then my 3 years, they're up like that. So I got an email. Fair enough, they did email me and tell me your subscription is going to expire in 30 days and you're going to be billed at this rate with the credit card we have on file. So I logged into the Surfshark website, which I hadn't done since the day I bought it, right? Because from that point forward, I just used the app. And honestly, I might have used it a half dozen times. It just slowed me down so much. It just wasn't worth using it. But I logged in and I went to my account settings looking for the button to cancel my subscription, and there was no such button. So it's like, click here to talk to support. So I click to talk to support, a little chat window opens on the website, and I typed in cancel subscription, and his bot came back and said, it appears you want to cancel your subscription. Is this correct? And I said, yes. And it said, well, I'm prepared to offer you a significant discount to change your mind. No, I still want to cancel. And I think it asked me one more time. I think it might have lowered the price one more time. And I went, no. And it said, okay, at the end of your subscription, you will not be renewed. But I was upset that I had to talk to somebody. That should be in my account settings as a little button for me to select. And so I let the Federal Trade Commission know, because the Federal Trade Commission wants you to report to them anytime a subscription is difficult to cancel. They're also collecting signatures for unnecessary and unavoidable fees that are tacked on, like when you stay at a hotel, there's resort fees. They're going to try and pass a law. They've done this a couple of times, but because of inflation and money's getting tight for people, this is highly on their agenda right now. And they've had over 10,000 comments from people, and you can still comment today. I'm trying to remember the name of the website for that. FTC unnecessary fees. Okay, just go to ftc.gov. And yeah, the Federal Trade Commission is exploring a rule to crack down on junk fees. Right now, there's not much they can do, but they want to pass a rule so they can have power in this area. And the agency is seeking comment from the public right now on harms from unnecessary, unavoidable, or surprise charges that inflate costs while adding little to no value. So I'm very happy to see that this is on the agenda. They started this October last year. And so they're looking at the comments. If you have a comment you want to leave, you can leave it anonymously. And that's the Federal Trade Commission in the United States. And you could just Google FTC unnecessary fees, and the first link it should offer you is this link I'm referring to here from the FTC. So I'm glad to see that. I also wanted to show you this Netgear router. I use Netgear routers so much, when I say the word Netgear, the word router follows automatically. But let me show you the Amazon page for this Wi-Fi adapter here, so you can better understand why I thought it was going to be more of a traditional size. They don't really have a reference picture, you know, to have like a can of soda or something next to it so you can get an idea of just how big it really is. So let me share the screen with you. Right there it is. So yeah, like when I saw this initial picture, that to me looked like a USB-C port based on how tiny it is compared to the rest of the adapter. Every other Wi-Fi adapter I've seen doesn't have so much space on each side, but clearly it's a Type A. You just need to look at it a little closer. But there's no reference picture here, so you have no concept of just how massive this thing truly is. And I want to say just the other day, it was like $90. I can't believe it's only $48. But do know that you will have to provide the driver yourself. And in order to get the driver, you've got to be online. And in order to get online, you need to have a wireless adapter. So you got to figure that one out on your own. But this was recommended by Maximum PC Magazine as one of their favorite. I think they did like a top 10 or something like that of Wi-Fi adapters for different uses. And I think this one was used for performance. They said this is one of the best performing routers, although a little pricey. I want to say it was $90 just the other day. I think there's a way we can Google. If we look at the product model number, which is the A7000, we should be able to go to a website like camel.com and type in Netgear A7000 and get a price history on this. Here it is right here. So these are the prices that were being asked for it from various retailers here, right? It shows you Amazon, third-party new, third-party used. and we can see the pricing history as it fluctuates, as most technology does, but not everything. Apple products tend to stay one price or go higher, not necessarily lower. Shows the highest price was $84.99. Okay, so not 90. And the lowest price is, I guess, what it's at today. So yeah, you could almost buy 2 of them for what they were charging just the other day. So know that camel.com is available if you want to look at the pricing history of things. A lot of things have gone up in price. This Lazy Susan that you see me use used to be $48 and now it's $60. But to be honest, this is a $200 Lazy Susan all day. This is a 22-inch wide Lazy Susan. It's very large. And I would say that even at $60, it's a good value. What's hilarious to me is, despite being a tech channel, I'm an affiliate from Amazon. So if you click on any of my Amazon links and make a purchase, I make a small commission. I can see what was sold, when it was sold, but I have no idea who bought it. So you're perfectly anonymous. I don't even know what state it was sold in. All I know is this is how much commission I've earned based on these sales. Well, how many of these Lazy Susans do you think I've sold as a result of just, and I don't sell it, right? I'm just using it and people ask me, where can I get one? I'm responsible for selling over 100 of these since I've introduced it, just based on my Amazon link. So for people who bought it without using my link, who knows how many additional units I'm responsible for selling. And this company has no idea who I am or why there was like a sudden spike in people buying this. But it just cracks me up, right? Of all the tech stuff I show, it's some basic piece of furniture that's the most popular item. If it's not the most popular, it's in the top 10 for sure. So in any event, I just find that slightly amusing. I guess we can get to today's review now, since it's been an hour. This is the Sabrent USB Type-C docking station. Now, I am a fan of Sabrent. I like their stuff. They're a US-based company. I think their solid-state drives are built here in the US as well. They tend to be a bit more money than other manufacturers. They have the same 5-year warranty on their NVMe drives as pretty much everybody in the industry has. Their drives run fairly decent in speed. They're typically not the leader, but they're also not a budget drive. The 4 terabyte NVMe drives I have been using up until recently have been Sabrent's. Now I've been switching over to the Western Digital 850X or the Seagate FireCuda 530 on their 4 terabyte drives. Reason? The Western Digital is PCIe Gen 4, as are the Seagate, and the Sabrent drives I have are Gen 3, which is fine for the systems I built them in because those are Gen 3. But going forward, I think there's a better value from Western Digital in that space. I bought a couple of 4 terabyte, I can't think, is it 850N or 850X? But they were on sale for like $330 for a high performance 4 terabyte NVMe drive. So I've got a couple of them sitting on my part shelf, and I intend to upgrade the newer Dell XPS laptop I purchased. I put a Sabrent 4 terabyte drive in it, but it should take a Gen 4 drive, which would give me a little better performance. It's only going to be milliseconds, but that's just me being a nerd. And I also want to upgrade the Wi-Fi adapter in it to a Wi-Fi 6E adapter, because I really don't have anything that's Wi-Fi 6E. And I'm curious, if it's a 20% improvement and I'm transferring these large video files across the network to my NAS wirelessly. To give you a basis for comparison, when I transfer files on a wired network, it moves at pretty much the speed the network can handle. 1 gigabit wired Ethernet will move the data about 129, 130 megabytes per second. Wirelessly, I'm achieving about 80, sometimes 90. So if I can go to Wi-Fi 6E and establish that connection wirelessly, I'm hoping to get closer to the wired speeds on those large video transfers. However, I'm not in a big hurry for it. It's not a major, I've got more important things I've got to do. So I got a bunch of parts sitting on a shelf for when I have time, and that's one of those projects. If Wi-Fi 7 adapters come out, before I get around to installing the Wi-Fi 6E, then I'll obviously put a Wi-Fi 7 adapter in there and get a Wi-Fi 7 router and see what sort of percentage of increase I'm going to see on my local area network. None of these things are making my internet any faster, by the way, so don't think you're going to get faster internet. Unless what you're running now is lower than 100 megabits per second on your Wi-Fi, which would make sense if you're using Wi-Fi that's 7 or 8 years ago. Like if your router's more than 5 or 6 years old, yeah, it's possible, you know, that your Wi-Fi is running at a fraction of the speed of your internet. But I have digressed. Let's get this open. What, should we do some close-ups, you think? Yeah, go ahead and grab the close-up camera. Let me get this old motherboard out of the way. This is its last time it'll ever be seen. The next thing it'll see is probably a little acid dip to strip the gold off of it, I think is what they typically do with these. I'll just put that there for now. And you know what? I don't think I need this Lazy Susan right now, so I will put it somewhere where we can trip over it. Let's see. Where's a good... Oh, I'll put it in here. All right. Get that out of the way. Now, I've left the Ace Magician Mini PC out here primarily because it's already here. It's not that it's my favorite mini PC. It's not that it's ideal for this demonstration. It's just already there, all right? So a shout out to the folks at Ace Magician. Oh, we're on this camera, aren't we? Let me switch over to the close-up camera, which should be... right here. Yeah, come on over. All right. Now, hey, the picture looks pretty good. Wow. Picture's looking good. All right. Here's the box, if you want to give that a look-see. Now, this was on sale last week at Amazon. Unfortunately, it's not on sale anymore, but if it goes on sale once, it may be good to add it to a wish list and keep an eye on it daily, because it'll likely go on sale again. However, even at the regular retail price, if it does everything they say it's going to do, and looking at how small this box, I mean, this box is, look at it compared to my Gatorade bottle. It's much, much smaller than I was expecting it to be. So even as far as a hard drive dock or hard drive toaster, sometimes we call them toasters, I can't believe the box is that tiny. This is the opposite of the Netgear router, call it a router again, the Netgear Wi-Fi adapter. Look at, the box is almost nearly the same size for this USB Wi-Fi adapter versus this hard drive dock. That's insane. All right, let me grab my argument convincer. Always cut towards the camera, lady. All right. Oh, I've been missing my chat room. Let me bring that back up and see what I'm missing. Lawn Dog says the WD-SN850X. Yes, that's the one I'm talking about. Moves over 7,000 megabytes per second. He says he owns one. He thinks it's fantastic. 2 terabyte is like $100, $190. Yeah, it should be less than $100 a terabyte if you want a good deal. So go ahead and take a look at the claims they make here on the back of the box. Like I said, Sabrent, they're not the cheapest manufacturer, but what they make is good stuff. I know if I'm buying something with the Sabrent name on it, that I'm buying quality stuff. I think of it like Pepperidge Farm. You know, if you go to the grocery store, you go to the market, and there are Pepperidge Farm goldfish crackers. There's Pepperidge Farm cookies. We all know that's good stuff. And they sell it. It's a small bag of these cookies. You get far less than, let's say, other cookies, and they typically cost as much or more. But you know what's in that bag is going to be good. Well, I kind of think of Sabrent that way. They're they have a lot of unique gadgets that aren't, like if you were to type in a hard drive dock, USB hard drive dock in Amazon, dozens of them come up and they almost all look alike. There's like a couple designs you just see over and over. Now, I have never seen one like this before. This is clearly, as far as I know, a unique product that only Sabrent makes. And I'm sure there's going to be knockoffs coming out now. My understanding is this little blue door where the M.2 drive goes is a heatsink. So that's pretty cool. All right, let's get this opened up here. All right, well that does look about right as far as size goes. Oh, it's super light. That weighs like 2 ounces. There's our door with a thermal pad, and you can put an M.2. I want to test that this will read SATA and NVMe, and it looks like there's actually 2 in there, 2 slots. Maybe you can do NVMe to NVMe? I did not. Look, when I'm looking at this stuff, I'm sort of getting the gist of it. I'm busy. Things don't often get a lot of my attention. And the picture they shows 1 drive going in here. And I thought, hey, that's great. But I'm looking in there and I see 2 slots. On the front, this is the front. Door will click closed. Here is a 2.5-inch drive slot. Let me just show you so you can picture this. I'll just grab a couple of spare drives I've got laying around here we can use. These are bad drives, they don't work, but for demonstration purposes, this would be like a typical drive you find in a laptop, a mechanical 2.5-inch drive. And if you look down inside, you'll see the connector down in there, which appears to be facing me. So this would go in this way, right into that opening. Well, this drive's thicker than most, and it'll just lock into place like that. Or, and again, this could be a solid state or a mechanical drive. We can put our mechanical drive in there, as long as it's SATA. Slide it in. Am I putting it in backwards? Yes. Goes in this way. And it just sits down in there, and then when you sit it down, it connects the data and power to the connector on the back of the drive. And now I have an external hard drive. I don't need an enclosure. I could put my backups on this, stick a Post-it note on it, put it up on the shelf in the closet, and I don't have to worry about the drive overheating in an enclosure, or that somebody can just plug it in via USB and pull my backups off of it without some type of a dock. So, or an enclosure. So this makes it super easy, especially when you're a tech and you're working with a lot of whatever gets brought in, a lot of random stuff that comes in for service. And this enables me to rescue data from a drive. Now, when it comes to the M.2 side of things, let me grab a couple of drives. I think I have, let's see, this Western Digital right here would be a SATA drive because it's got the two cutouts. And we should be able to put that into one slot or the other, but it's very dark to see in there. Okay, so there is only, now that I can see it, there is only 1 slot. Those other things are just the walls of the adapter. Let me get a flashlight. Let me shine it in here for you guys. It's just the right amount of light I've got to give it. It gets too bright and you can't see anything. It's too dark, you can't see anything. So the good news is, it is accepting the SATA drive. We slide that right down into the slot, and it just sits in there like that. and then we can close that. So it is not dual, which is good. I was like, well, if it was dual, why wouldn't they say that? It does come with an extra little pad. This is the other box I'm opening here. We've got our USB Type-C to Type-C cable. And then we've got a USB Type-C to Type-A cable. So for the best performance, you want to use this Type-C to Type-C, but if you have an older computer that doesn't support Type-C, then the Type-C end will go into the dock, and the Type-A will go into your computer. And then we've got a power adapter, which does not say Sabrent on it, unfortunately. So I will get my label maker and I will write the word Sabrent on it, because all too often these power adapters look alike, and a lot of consumers think if the barrel plug fits that that's the right adapter, but that couldn't be further from the truth, and it's a great way to burn out not only the adapter, but more importantly, the device you're plugging in. So it is of critical importance that you keep your power adapters, specifically with the barrel connectors, labeled so you don't mix them up as people tend to do. So that's a SATA. Let me grab an NVMe and we'll test this bad boy out and see if it does everything they say it's supposed to do. Let's see, what should I grab here? Well, you know, ironically or coincidentally, Sabrent, they put their drives in these really nice metal boxes, and I save the metal boxes to store open drives. So there's another SATA drive here. Let's open the Type-C to Type-C. Yeah. I will say a combination of me not wearing my glasses and how dark it is in there, it did kind of look like there was dual slots. Just so we're clear, it is a single slot, which is fine. Again, the idea of this cloning is it can clone from whatever drive you've got in the main area to whatever drive you've got in the M.2. And on the back, you can tell it if you want to go, what direction you want to copy, A to B or B to A. It's very important you get this correct, because if you tell this to clone the blank drive to the data drive, there's no going back. You will have overwritten your original. Now, which one's A and which one's B is the next question, right? On the back, there's our Type-C cable input for the USB cable, our power adapter plug, and our on-off switch. In general, it's a good idea to always turn this off, regardless if the manufacturer says it's hot swappable. I don't know if they say that, but it's a good habit to always turn this off anytime you're switching drives, plugging or unplugging a drive. And then, of course, we've got the label underneath the product. I would have liked to have seen a similar label on the power adapter, just so we don't, if these items get separated, we know what goes with what. Then we've got some status lights down below that will tell us, you know, in the process of a clone, that it, you know, what it's doing. And then there's a light on each side here that shows that it's powered up. And I think they blink on and off when there's access. And there is a description below the A to B switch that explains A is the M.2 to SATA. B is, how can they both be the same? Hold on a second. Let me get my glasses and see this. It's hard to read it backwards and on a screen 20 feet away from 15 feet away. Oh, okay. So I would have done this differently. The way they're explaining it, they're saying A is M.2 to SATA, and B, you see the little arrow? That's the only thing different between these two images, is the direction of the copy. So B would be copying the SATA drive, in other words, the drive you've plugged in the top, to the M.2, and flipping it to A, which is the default, is copying the M.2 to a drive, which to me, I would have reversed that. I think most people are going to want B. Now this is only with regards to cloning, and then that's what that button is for right there. When you press that button in, that's going to start your clone. And if you have this direction backwards, you will overwrite and erase your source material. So you double, triple check that before you hit that button, because like I said, there's no going back. And that's the only button on this whole thing here. So here it shows a power symbol. So if it lights up on the left, that means it's got power. And then this shows 25% done. It's a little pie chart with one little corner filled in. Then the second one shows 50% done with half the pie filled in. The third LED, well, it's actually the fourth one, isn't it? That's going to be 75% done with 3 parts of the pie. And then the final LED will be all 4 corners or all 4 sections filled in. So it's basically saying 0 to 25%, 26 to 50%, 51 to 75%, and 76 to 100%. And then I imagine it gives you some indication of LED when it's completed the copy. And this only applies for the cloning process. Otherwise, you just get used to seeing that little power adapter, power LED light when you give it power, and then these 2 lights will blink, if I understand correctly, when it's reading or writing data to either the M.2 or the SATA. You don't have to populate both of these. You could just plug it in just like this and use it to read your M.2 drives. You could plug 2 drives in and just have a D and an E drive, and you can access them both individually as well. So it does all of this in this little tiny package. Let me get it plugged in, and we'll see how this thing works. We'll also, let me turn on the Ace Magician computer there, and we'll use that as our test bed. Starshine says, I wonder how fast it clones. I would guess that it's going to be determined on how big of a drive you're copying from, and whether you're going from mechanical to SSD or SSD to SSD. I imagine all of that is a variable that will change based on the copy itself, right? Based on what the media is. I wouldn't suggest that it's going to copy at one speed regardless of your media, because that's just not the way technology works. We can probably look up the specs to see what its maximum throughput is, but I've just plugged in the power, and I can turn this on, and we should see the power light on, which we do. We already have a drive in it. And let me grab the USB cable, and we'll plug it into that little Ace Magician computer there. I just can't get over how tiny that is. I mean, that's practically smaller than my old drive dock, which I also think is a Sabrent. But it's just a drive dock. It doesn't do M.2. Oh, it's a pluggable. But look at the size difference. This is just a regular hard drive dock. Compare these side by side. That's thicker, and they're nearly the same width. Yeah, this one's about 3/4 of an inch longer to make up for that slot. And obviously you can't do cloning with this all by itself. You'd have to get a dual drive one. And even if you did, it wouldn't be cloning to M.2, nor is there any kind of an adapter you could buy to adapt it. So you'd have to essentially get a USB adapter for the NVMe drive, and then you'd be limited to the USB speeds in your cloning or duplication process. Adding another variable to how long is it going to take, right? And then let's grab that USB-C cable. Oh, I already did. Let's plug it in. So we'll plug in the USB-C. Move that out of the way here. Go ahead, lift your feet up. We'll move that cable because that's a tripping hazard waiting to happen. So USB-C, I've got one right here, right on the front. And then we'll plug this one in over here. I don't know if I have any data on that, but we're going to find out here in about 30 seconds. Okay, so I'm going to go back over to camera 1. So you can turn that one off. Thank you for the camera work.
You're welcome.
And we'll go over to the HDMI input, which should be the Windows on the Ace Magician computer here. Yes, it's already booted, of course. And I gotta use this keyboard and mouse. And I'm gonna go full screen for me so I can see better. Okay, click here. This PC. So we're not seeing a drive because I'm gonna guess this drive has had the partitions removed off of it. So let's try something here. Let's go to search for disk management. Yes, that's exactly what it is. So it's recognizing we have a drive that has no partition on it. So I'll just click OK, and we'll go ahead and due to a device hardware error. Well, that's interesting. Disk 1 unknown, not initialized. Right click, initialize, disk 1. It doesn't like that. I wonder if it's not SATA compatible. That'll bum me out if it's not SATA compatible, because that means there's one type of storage it won't read. But I might be doing something wrong, so I'm going to shut this off. And even though I've powered it off, the blue light on the front still remains on for some reason. Can it run just off USB power? Oh, yes, it can. If you're running a 2.5-inch drive or an M.2 drive, you do not need to plug it into the wall. The USB-C power will power it. All right, I'm going to take that out. And I have a drive here that I definitely know has data on it. This is an NVMe drive. Plug that in. You know what? You guys can't see me, so let me switch back to camera 1 just for a moment here. We will plug this one in here. Man, it's so dark in there to find the slot. With the hard drive toasters, once you line them up, once you get the right direction, it just fits right in there. With this, however, I wish they had a little ramp or guide that you could use to help guide the drive into the slot. Unfortunately, you just have to kind of look in there and be careful. I'm sure I can pull the power from this and turn it on and it will power on because it's just M.2. The only time we should need power is if we put a 3.5-inch mechanical drive in there, or if we want it to operate standalone. So in other words, we unplug the USB and we want to do a copy from the drive in the toaster to the M.2 drive. So let me switch back over now to the desktop. And again, I have to go full screen so I can see what you can see. It's always full screen for you guys. And this drive should be the drive from my... No, I'm not seeing that either. Huh. Let's go to disk management again. Create and format right there. Now, in this case, this is only the C drive. So maybe the USB-C power is not enough after all, at least on the Ace Magician. So I'm going to go ahead and plug power back into it now. Let's see if that changes anything. Because when I turn the power on, the blue light did come on the front of the dock. But this does not seem to be making any difference here. Let me unplug it from USB and plug it back in just to make sure my connections... Sometimes I don't plug the cables in far enough if they fit really tight. Hey, that's made a big difference. Now we can see... Oh, I'm using the wrong mouse. We can see this. It says disk D and E. And Oh, this is also interesting. Let me go back to camera 1 here. You'll see the blue light right here on this side is lit up. So that obviously indicates this is the read and write activity for any drive installed in the M.2 slot. And the other LED symmetrically opposed to it is for read or writes, I'm assuming, for any drive installed in the toaster part of it, in the 2.5 or 3.5 inch drive part of this device. That makes sense. I was thinking they just gave you 2 LEDs that blink on and off for looks, but it actually has a purpose. One side represents one slot, the other side represents the other slot, and this way you know if there's any data activity. If the light is steady, it just means it's on and ready to be used. If the light is blinking, you definitely do not want to interrupt. You don't want to pull the drive out or shut power off for the drive that's blinking, because that means it's in the middle of a read or write cycle, and that's how you can corrupt the entire platform. So now I'm just curious, and again, I emphasize about not reading the directions. A lot of people, myself included, we buy a device, we take it out of the box, we hook it up. Most people generally don't look at the directions unless they have to. We often get so excited to want to use the device, and it should be fairly obvious how to use a drive dock, that eventually after I get it going, then I'll go and look at the directions just to see if I've missed anything. But I love the discovery of it, and I think a good product should be intuitive, it should be labeled properly, it should be clear how to use it without having to read what is often poorly translated directions. But again, Sabrent is a USA company, so their directions are always grammatically correct in my experience. I'm going to go ahead and turn this off, and let me go back over to the desktop because I want to try unplugging this, thinking maybe before my USB-C cable wasn't all the way in. I want to see if that'll come on just with the USB-C cable hooked up. So let's go back to the desktop. Well, isn't that interesting? It still shows the drive is available here. So I'm going to, well, no, wait a minute. The power switch is off. Oh, this isn't my desktop. This is some customer's desktop. I don't even know whose that is. Okay, so I can access it. Let me bring up the File Explorer again, back to this PC. So the switch is off and it's still working. How's that possible? Flip the switch to on, and that doesn't seem to, so it's not shutting off. That's interesting. That's pretty interesting. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to remove the M.2 drive right now. Yep, and those drive letters came out. I'm going to put the SATA M.2 back in it. And I have a blue light. Now I'm going to try the disk management because this drive I know has no partition on it. And I want to see if it will let me, if it'll let me initialize it. No, it does not let me initialize it. That's absolutely fascinating to me. So now I just don't know if it's not compatible with SATA M.2s or if I'm missing a step here somewhere. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this drive out, and I'm going to put the other drive back in that has that data on it. I thought this was one of my old drives, but clearly it's not. Let's bring that up. There it is. And remember, we're just on USB-C power only. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean this disk by basically resetting it to like new. And I do that by typing CMD, right click on the command prompt to run it as administrator, click yes, and I'm going to type in disk part. This is taking me back to the 1980s. And then I'm going to say list the disks, and it's going to show me my internal drive on the Ace Magician. and the 2 terabyte drive that has all that data on it. I'm going to select disk 1 and I'm going to type the word clean. What that's going to do is it's going to wipe all the data off of that drive. I'm going to type exit and exit. Now the drive is in a like new state where there are no partitions and no formatting. And let's see if we can partition and format this one by going to disk management. And that's what I'm looking for, create and format hard disk partitions. A box should appear and say, hey, you've got a drive here that needs to be partitioned and formatted. GPT or MBR, that's fine. I click OK. Then right click in new simple volume, next, next, and next, and next, and finish. All right, and now it formats that M.2 drive. Perfect. So the question is it SATA drive compatible on the M.2 slot? Because that's a Western Digital SATA drive I'm testing with. And the documentation, rather what they're showing on Amazon, says it's NVMe on the M.2, but it also says it's SATA. But I don't know if it's referring only to the drive, the 2.5-inch and 3.5-inch drive dock side things. So what I can do now is I'm going to pull this newly formatted drive out, and I'm leaving everything on. As long as the blue light isn't blinking, then we're not I'm not worried about corrupting any data, although in this case there's no data to corrupt anyway. But do be aware of that. I've got another SATA-based drive. This is the one that came out of the Ace Magician because it came with an M.2 SATA that I Acronis cloned into a M.2 NVMe just to get a much better performance. So with the SATA drive installed, this is now my second attempt at reading a SATA M.2. This one, I think, still has the Ace Magician software. And so far, we're not getting any response that I've plugged anything in. So let's go back to disk management. Oh, well, I mean, it's telling me this drive is not formatted. All right, click OK. Okay, I'm going to guess that, and this is unfortunate, that the Sabrent M.2 slot is NVMe only, and that's why we're running into this problem. So that means, as a tech, this is not the all-in-one solution I was hoping it would be. Now, because I don't know for sure, it's possible there's some other step I need to follow. I'm going to take a quick look at this little tiny instruction manual they've included. So that's 2 SATA M.2s that it just can't read. Now the M.2 on the instructions here, and I want to be clear about how literal and how detailed tech can sometimes be. It says it's for M.2 PCIe NVMe. It does not say NVMe/SATA. Then the other side of it is 2.5-inch, 3.5-inch SATA SSD and HDD. So they literally, this is quite literal that it's NVMe only. Now they do have little NVMe enclosures that will read NVMe and SATA. So we have the technology to put that 2 controllers on the one M.2, and I'm just saddened that that's not a part of the of this device. So let's see here. I was just going to verify this. Product information. I'll share these with you. We can go through them together. Obviously, I'm having a delivery or something that's going on there in the background. Function. Press and hold the clone button for 3 to 5 seconds until all LEDs begin to blink. All right, so that's starting a clone. It does show that the M.2 SSDs supports the 2242 length, 2260, and of course the very common 2280 length. So that's pretty much all of them. Supports NVMe via 2 PCI 3.0 lanes and supports the trim and UASP functions of solid-state drives. The downlink supports both PCIe and SATA interface protocols simultaneously. Both drives may be displayed and accessed at the same time. So it's referring to 2.5-inch and 3.5-inch drives along with M.2 NVMe's can be used simultaneously. You'll get a drive letter for each one. So it's not like you got to choose one or the other. Supports bidirectional cloning, meaning it's got the switch if you want to go one. It supports either direction, from or to one drive to the other. You've got your LED status explained here. Pay attention to step 4. If the destination drive is physically smaller in capacity than the source when you're cloning, the clone progress indicator will fill and an error will be reported with 2 flashes. Then it walks you through the installation method, how you plug the drives in. Pretty simple stuff here. And then just one last page. Not a whole lot to read here. Pretty straightforward. And that's our directions. So that is all of it. And just a little sad this doesn't support M.2 SATA drives, because the pluggable portable NVMe/SATA enclosure that I like to use as a tech is certainly much more portable than this. And I would love for this to support SATA M.2. This would be a great tool if they did that. I'm a little disappointed. I think it's a great idea. And I would have gladly paid $20 more for it. I mean, the upwards of $100 if it would read all 4 formats, right? That includes 2.5-inch SATA, 3.5-inch SATA, SSD or mechanical, and M.2 NVMe and M.2 SATA. Because we know they make devices that do have dual controllers that can do both. So to me, there doesn't seem to be a good excuse for that to be missing. And oftentimes, well, I wouldn't be able to, I was going to say oftentimes I want to clone from an M.2 SATA to an M.2 NVMe. This wouldn't necessarily be helpful in that regard, except in using it the same way I'm using the smaller little NVMe SATA enclosure, hook it up to USB, and then, you know, go from the internal drive to the external drive, depending on which direction I want to clone it. So if I was working for Sabrent, I would say, give me 2 slots for M.2, so we can do M.2 cloning and make sure that both slots can do SATA and NVMe, or label them very clearly. The slot on the left is for M.2 NVMe, and the slot on the right is for M.2 SATA. Preference is to just remove any opportunity for user error and just have it auto-detect whichever you plug into whichever slot. I think that would be awesome to have 2 M.2s side by side. And there is a company that makes that, and I've talked about this in the past. Where did I put it? Oh, here it is. Acasis makes this little drive dock here. And this is super tiny. And this holds 2 M.2s. It's also Type-C. It's quite a bit more money than that dock from Sabrent. I think this is right around $100. And I believe this does NVMe or SATA, if I'm not mistaken. This might be NVMe only, though. Yeah, I guess this is NVMe only. Now, SATA's more or less going away anyway, especially with Microsoft pushing this direct storage technology that offloads a lot of stuff onto your GPU, which is really just a thing for gamers. But you have to have an NVMe drive for direct storage, and you have to have a certain level of GPU for that to work. And you can Google Microsoft Direct Storage if you want to get into all the details of that if you're a gamer. If you're not a gamer, there's no benefit to you at this point. However, It will not work with SATA drives. So we're starting likely to see the beginning of the end for SATA storage drives as we move more and more to the cheaper, easier to install, takes up less space M.2 storage, and faster, much faster storage on an M.2 NVMe. An M.2 SATA will run no differently in speed than any other type of SATA. The limitation is the SATA interface itself, or the SATA protocol, I should say. So yeah, I'm a little disappointed in that. So I may end up sending that back. If it's NVMe only, that's just too limited for my needs as a tech. I have Silverstone's MS06, I think is what it's called. No, it's a TS16. And I love the TS16. And I've got it over here somewhere. I set it down. Well, I've got the box. I'll just show you the box. This is my go-to as a tech when I'm working on a client's machine, because this works as a dock. There's no tools required. It's just got a little rubber piece here that you bend back and you slide your M.2 drive in it and click it down. USB Type-C also can be it's USB Type-C into the adapter, and then out of it you can be Type-C or Type-A. And this will read NVMe or SATA, which it says proudly right down here. So if this controller was built into this dock, we'd have a winner. But these are all different companies. We've got Silverstone, Sabrent, and then that Acasis unit that I was just showing you, this unit here. This is great if you want to clone NVMe to NVMe. Why? Capacity. Somebody might have bought an NVMe drive that's 500 gigs, and it might have cost $200. Now for $200, you can get 2 terabytes, or maybe you want to go to 4 terabytes, but you don't want to reinstall everything. So you could buy a device like this and clone to your newer drive, say to this enclosure, and then when it's done, turn everything off and swap the drives out. Or just go ahead and pull the drive out of the unit itself. And as long as the drive you're cloning to is as big or larger than your source in total capacity, you don't even have to plug this into a computer. So you don't have to learn any software. You don't have to pay for any software licenses. It will take longer, but you can literally, and again, make sure you get your direction correct, because if you clone from your new drive to your old one, you will permanently erase it. So make sure you have the right direction selected, plug it into the wall, hit the clone button, go to bed. It'll take a while. But when it's done, all you have to do is shut it off, plug your brand new drive into your desktop or laptop, and it should just boot up with a lot more storage space available. It's pretty simple. No need for any software. And it's a great way to upgrade a smaller NVMe drive to a larger one that contains your operating system. Obviously, if it doesn't contain an operating system, all you have to do is copy and paste. And this will be slower by doing it this way, because again, it's going to copy all the sectors, whether they're empty or not. It doesn't just copy data. So if you have a 500 gig drive in this example as your source, you take that out of your computer, plug it into this. You got your brand new, larger capacity NVMe drive, plug it into the other slot, make sure you've got it's going to be labeled. There's no switch. One of these slots says source and one will say target. You don't want to put your source in the target area. Then you're going to hit the go button, essentially, and it will clone one to the other. Or as a data rescue device, or as a backup. If let's say now you've got this 500 gig NVMe drive left over. Well, now you can format it and use it as an external storage drive. Put your backups on it. You don't have to buy an enclosure for it. Just pop it into the slot and access it just like a drive toaster. And if you have 2 of them, you can put them both in there, plug it in through USB, and access each one at the same time. You can have, let's say, drive D and drive E. So this is really, really handy, but very limited in that it's NVMe only. This is limited in that it's also NVMe only. This, on the other hand, will do NVMe or SATA. And as a tech, I don't like having anything slow me down. I got one tool for this scenario, one tool for that scenario. After a while, I just got a bunch of tools, you know? So fewer tools is better, in my opinion. It's just less stuff I have to carry around with me, less stuff I have to worry about breaking or leaving an adapter behind that the device needs that's proprietary to the device, as most power adapters are. So just a little bit of perspective for you to consider and what to expect if you buy such a device. But yeah, I think I'm probably going to send this back. I'm just saddened that it's not covering SATA. I hope they'll update this. Maybe they'll do another revision of it so that it's just universal for all consumer storage. I would love to see that. But for what it's offering here, I can't see it's going to be much use to me. They're this close from having a perfect design. That close. But it might meet your needs just fine. So do know that these things do exist. As far as I know, this is kind of a unique, one-of-a-kind type situation here from Sabrent. Although I suspect now that it's out in the market, there'll be some competitors jumping on the bandwagon. I won't be surprised. And it may be a competitor that offers the SATA and NVMe controller on it before Sabrent does. I've seen this happen before. But I do know when you're buying from Sabrent, it's good, well-made product, and they have very good support, and they're USA-based. I also want to say that, just for full disclosure, none of these products I've shown you, except for the Ace Magician, these products have all been paid for out of my own pocket so that I can review them because I have a genuine interest in them. The Ace Magician computer was sent to me for free. They're not paying me, but they did send the computer for free. And they're sending me another one. That's the next model up from this, I believe. And I will hopefully have that review for you next Friday. Hey, there's our good friend Madi Yoel in the chat room with a $10 super chat contribution. Thank you, Madi. Good to see you, my friend. Patrick Gursaw said, I almost bought that dock, but because it's NVMe only, that's why I did not buy it for my computer side business. Byte LLC in the chat says, sorry, I stepped away, so if you have just NVMe, would it take the place of Acronis, or would you need a separate software in addition? That depends what you're cloning to. So if you're cloning from NVMe to a SATA 2.5 inch or 3.5 inch drive, or from a 2.5 inch, 3.5 inch SATA drive to an NVMe, then this unit can do that all by itself, as long as your target drive is the same capacity or larger as the source drive. This doesn't just copy data, it copies sectors. So if you've got 500 gigs worth of sectors, then you need a drive that you're copying to that can hold 500 gigs worth of sectors, regardless if they're empty or have data on them. So 500 gigs is our source, let's say, then our target would have to be 500 gigs or larger. And it's a literal clone, meaning that when you're done, the target device is going to be the same size partition as your source, because it literally cloned a 500 gig, let's say, to a 2 terabyte drive. So when you go to use that 2 terabyte drive, it's going to have a 500 gig partition. You say, where's the other 3/4 of my storage? You'll need to go into disk management and extend the partition to take up the empty space manually. That's one of the benefits of using cloning software, is the cloning software can do all these partition resizings for you automatically, and it doesn't copy every sector unless you specifically choose that option. By default, you're doing data only. So if that 500 gig drive only has 20 gigs of data on it, it's going to copy much, much faster because it's only copying 20 gigs instead of 5,000 gigs, or 500 gigs rather, in this example. So hopefully that answers your question. Luke Greenia says, I still want one of those mini PCs. Yeah, well, they just keep making more and more of them, so your options for what you want to choose for one, there's plenty to choose from and more coming. Patrick Grusa says, I believe in a year or two, the M.2 SATA will be faded out. Well, but Patrick, the problem is how long consumers hold on to stuff. As a technician, I have to work on whatever the customer has that needs work. So if the customer has an M.2 SATA drive that's 10 years old, I have two options. Turn away the work and the money, or have tools that are M.2 SATA compatible for those customers that call. I just don't have a crystal ball. I don't know how many customers in the future are going to reach out to me that want to upgrade or replace or data rescue information off of an M.2 SATA. So to have the ability to read it or to clone it or copy it is very important to me as a tech, regardless if they've been off the market for 5 years, if they've been off the market for 10 years. If I don't have the tool, then I lose the job, and if I lose the job, I lose money. So it's not as though they just don't make them anymore, and everybody who's got one, suddenly they disappear, they go into the ether somewhere. Who's ever got one will continue to use it. Generally, as a consumer, they will use it as long as they can get away with using it. They don't want to spend one penny if they don't have to. What is the transfer rate of the dock? Well, that depends. The transfer rate of the internal clone versus the transfer rate of the USB-C depends on, of course, how fast your USB-C will support. I will say on the box, it supports up to, I think it said 10 gigabytes per second. Let me go take another look at the Amazon product page here and see if they mention the speed. It supports USB 3.2 Gen 2 10 gigabits per second speed with an appropriate host port, but it is backwards compatible at respective speeds to other USB 3.1, 3, USB 2, even USB 1, and that of course is going to limit. But at its maximum fullest potential, 10 gigabits per second, assuming you've got a USB 3.2 Gen 2 port. Of course, 10 gigabits per second is way faster than a 2.5 or 3.5 inch SATA or any SATA drive can transfer. That really only comes into play with the NVMe side of things. Does anybody have any other questions for me? He says Byte says he wishes there was a dual NVMe driver. Well, there is, I just showed it. That's the cases. This is NVMe to NVMe only. Yeah. Amazon sells those. This is the TS16 from Silverstone, which is a single drive. M.2 SATA or NVMe will fit in here. This is dual NVMe only. And this is a single NVMe only with no SATA support on the M.2 side, only on the hard drive side. So that's 3 different tools I need as a technician depending on the situation. And actually this one's redundant for me. As long as I have this and I have this is more or less useless to me because I have a regular hard drive toaster, which I already showed you. And I can hook one up via one USB port, hook the other one up through the other USB port. And since this doesn't support SATA, it means I can't get rid of the other tools. I would still need them. And therefore, this isn't solving anything for me, unfortunately. I was hoping I could remove all of these devices and have it all in one, with perhaps the exception of the dual NVMe dock here, which is a pretty unique device. So, yeah, I'm a little saddened by that. But it's a great step in the right direction. And I can't wait to see a revision of this. I can't wait to see the next one they come out with, because, I mean, I wish this would have come out complete. I wish they would have held it back from the market until they put the dual controller on there, but it is what it is. But I would wait for the next version of this, or wait to see what the competitors do in the marketplace, because this company, Acasis, I've never heard of them before, and they've got a solution like this that I've never seen anybody else offer. It's pretty unique. And I suspect there'll be some other typically Chinese company I've never heard of that will come out with one of these, probably for less money, that will read both SATA and NVMe M.2s. We'll see who gets there first. I hope it's Sabrent, but Starshine wants to know if I ever clone remotely. I think that would be a massive liability to the future of me being able to stay in business. It would be irresponsible. It would be reckless. It would be reckless for me to clone remotely. As a hobbyist, somebody sitting at home, you want to help a friend and you want to do something like that, have at it. As a professional that has liability and accountability, and I can get sued and potentially lose my business, even if it's just a customer writing a bad review and warning everybody to stay away from me because I did something I shouldn't have done, I will not clone a computer remotely. I can, but I don't gamble with my business. If it's that important to be cloned, then I need to make sure that everything is set up correctly and in the right direction, and that when the clone is done, that the reversal of the hardware, in other words, taking the new clone drive and installing it into the computer, is not something any customer can do. If a customer can do that, then they can do the clone themselves. If they're that technically competent to swap out the drives internally, they would have no reason to hire me. So there would be no justifiable reason to clone remotely. Other questions? Jason Wyrick said, I tried to clone remotely once and I regret doing it. It was a nightmare. Yeah, it's just not a wise thing to do. Now, if you've asked a question earlier, I haven't seen it. So if you feel like you've been ignored or I don't know, that your question wasn't seen, this will be the time to ask, because I'm going to take questions right now. And we're right at about the 2-hour point, which is where I like to stop. So I'll keep going as long as you have things to say. If, on the other hand, there's no other questions or topics to discuss, then we will wrap up today's video. So final call, last call, if you will, for any tech questions you have, not necessarily related to this, but if it's a technical question, if it's a problem you're trying to solve, we can help you solve it. Here, myself and the community can offer you some wonderful suggestions to answer what's on your mind. Is the dock reliable? I don't know what you mean by reliable. What is your question regarding reliability? Are you talking about data corruption? Are you talking about the drive randomly disconnecting? I've never seen a bad hard drive dock ever in my career. So I've never seen a dock go bad. I've seen USB cables go bad. But overall, if Sabrent makes it, like I said, they make very good quality items, in my opinion. I've never had a problem with any Sabrent device now that I think about it. So I guess yes, I guess it's reliable. Can you clone Windows 10? You can clone any drive, regardless if it's Windows, Linux, DOS. Yeah, the clone doesn't care about the operating system. The clone only cares about data, ones and zeros, that's all it sees. Can we take a minute and run Crystal DiskMark to speed test it? Yeah, sure. I'm assuming you want to test the NVMe portion, right? Because the hard drive portion is going to run the same externally on a USB Type-C. What do they call it? Gen 2 3.1? Is that what I said? So the hard drives are still going to run at about 130 to 180 megabytes per second, depending on the drive. As far as NVMe goes, yeah, we can run a test on there. Let's open this up. Take this out of here. So those are my two SATA drives. What did I do with my NVMe? It's right here. We'll pop that in. And the other thing I don't like is how difficult it is to get this to align with the slot. I wish that they had some kind of, you know what would be nice? You know, like when you're putting an SD card into a camera and there's like little slots or grooves that the sides slide in. I would love to see little grooves that you align this to so you can push it straight down. But there's too much variance going left and right that make it a little more difficult than it needs to be to find the slot properly and get that seated. Let me grab my utilities flash drive. We'll plug that into the USB port so I can copy Crystal Disk Mark, unless I've got it on there already. Let's take a quick look. Oh, another $10 comes in from Marty Yoel. He says, hello. Thanks again, Marty. Cowboy Rowdy contributes 20 bucks in Super Chat. He says, howdy, Carrie and Camera Girl and chat. Welcome in, Cowboy Rowdy. Thanks for your contribution. Planet Cryos contributed $5 via Super Chat. Says it's going to be 12 degrees Fahrenheit tonight in upstate New York. Hey, sounds brisk. I would like that. Mark Gaines contributed 10 pounds. He says there's an update on the Dell laptop battery. The vendor is sending a new one. Right on, good to hear. Bob R. contributed $10 via Super Chat. Says it's cold here in Boston. Wind chill is deadly. Hello, Carrie. Hey, Bob. Good to see you. Thank you for your contribution. Thank you all for supporting the channel. All right, let me go now to the desktop of the Ace Magician again. Do I have Crystal Disk Mark on here already? I do, so I don't need the flash drive anymore. So let me take that out of there. Let's bring up Crystal Disk Mark Portable. Oh, I gotta use the right mouse, don't I? Crystal Disk Mark Portable version here. On the 64-bit edition. Now, this drive is just an Intel budget drive. I think it does 2400 on the reads. And we'll just do all the tests and we'll see what that brings up. And while that's running, again, if you have other questions for me, fire away. Rob Dvorak wants to know, can there be a heating problem using multiple NVMEs in the mini PC? This mini PC only has one NVMe slot, but they are engineered and designed, if they come with two slots, to use two slots. A manufacturer will not sell you a device that requires, in the case of a computer, a third-party cooling option, or they wouldn't offer the ability to add that. There is a strange obsession on the internet regarding heat, but I can tell you in my career, rarely, and I mean very rarely, has heat ever been the source of a problem. But the way people talk on the internet, you think this was a common battle. Unless you're using the device in a way it was not engineered to be used, if you're, for example, figuring out some way to overclock it. I know there has been talk of overclocking storage, or you're doing an excessive amount of writes over an excessive period of time. So in other words, just copying a large file here and there as under normal usage wouldn't be a problem. Also, the PCIe Generation 4 likes heat. They actually run faster when they get hotter to a certain extent. Heat is not always the bad thing people make it out to be. And trying to avoid a problem that you don't have is really just looking for a problem you're trying to create. So in my opinion, having anxiety over what could be really depends on a number of variables that may be it may change the answer from yes to no depending on the situation. Overall though, in general, no. The heat sinks that are used on M.2 drives are mostly for looks. They don't really make much difference, except in very rare occasions. People make a big deal out of heat that is completely unrealistic. I would love to see a heat-related problem come in sometime so I can diagnose it and show it to you. You can go through the entire library of videos. I've been doing this here on YouTube since 2008. I've even gone to the extent of taking a heatsink off of an Intel Celeron chip and running Prime 95 on it, and the chip never overheats. So people make a really big deal out of something that's so rare. People talk about it like it's common, but it's very, very rare to have a heat-related problem with a computer unless you're using it in a way that's not intended. So that's straight from the tech's mouth there. Captain Blinsky with a $5 super chat. Thank you, Captain Blinsky. Taco says, cloning can just immortalize any corruptions or malware. I prefer a fresh install. I agree with you. When you're cloning, you're getting everything. If you have viruses, you're getting the viruses. If you've got gigs of temp files, well, you're cloning those too, right? If you've got a corrupted registry, you're just cloning the corrupted registry. Absolutely true. So cloning doesn't fix any problems. Cloning is strictly there to essentially replace a drive, typically for performance reasons or for capacity reasons. But if you're having problems unrelated to capacity or performance, cloning won't solve those problems. It's not a repair tool. Starshine says, somebody's trying to clone a 256 gig NVMe to a 1 terabyte NVMe drive using Acronis. They're having a problem. I would like to know if you have a video on that topic. Yeah, and all they have to do is search YouTube for the words Kerry Holzman and clone NVMe. You can also go to the free support Reddit forum for Acronis. Just type into Google Acronis space Reddit, and there's a whole Acronis community there with volunteers who can help you with that. And Jason Ryrick says, I think that was an i3 you took the heatsink off of, not a Celeron. You are correct. I've misspoke. It was an i3. Thank you for that. Lawn Dog says, thank you for running the speed test. It's informative. We're seeing the throughput of that particular NVMe drive. There's still room in the 10 gigabit throughput. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, this drive can perform faster. If I were to plug this drive in directly to an internal M.2 NVMe on a motherboard, we should see twice that speed. So I'm not quite sure that that we would, at least with this Ace Magician, with the Type-C adapter or controller that it has, I'm pretty sure that's our maximum throughput in this configuration, regardless if I put a faster M.2 in it. Tim Teal wants to know if it'll clone if it's got a bad sector on the drive. Well, that depends on the device, and it depends on how many sectors are bad. Typically, if it's just one bad sector, it'll skip over it. But very rarely does a drive ever have one bad sector. It's typically where there's one, there's typically others. So it varies. It varies on the condition of the drive, and it varies on the cloning tool. But in general, most tools will clone with bad sectors. It may take a long time because it may try to reread that sector over and over and over until it gives up and moves on to the next one. With a tool like Acronis, you can tell it to ignore errors, because Acronis, if it reaches a bad sector on a clone, it will pop up and say there's an error. Do you wish to continue, yes or no? And there's a little box you can say that just says ignore all errors. And that tells Acronis just whenever you encounter a bad sector, after a number of tries, just move on. And that can take a 30-minute clone job to 30 hours if the drive's in really bad shape. And once it's cloned, the drive may not be bootable, and the data you want may not be there if any of that was on any of the bad sectors. So again, it's not a repair tool, but in some way it can be used as a recovery tool, and that you can pull data that's not on the bad sectors. In most cases, you can pull that off without having to send the drive in for data recovery, but not always. Depends on how many bad sectors there are and why. Sometimes what you're interpreting as a bad sector, or what the computer is interpreting as a bad sector, is a damaged head on a hard drive platter. So because the platters are divided by the amount of data, the sectors may not all be in a logical row, but rather occurring every time that particular side of the platter with the damaged head is getting accessed. So that whole side of that platter is completely corrupted, unreadable, because the head is damaged. In that case, that would have to go to somewhere like $300 data recovery to do data recovery. Ideally, you would have a backup of any important software, so you wouldn't find yourself in that position ever. But there's our final numbers on the performance throughput of the Sabrent drive dock through the USB Type-C port on the Ace Magician SM06 mini PC. Okay. Just looking through to see if there's any other questions I've missed. Lawn Dog says, it's interesting what you're saying about the capabilities. I will take note of that, but it's still an awesome little device to meet my needs, and I'm going to purchase. Hey, well, the link for this is in the video notes. If you use the link, I make a small commission. Something this inexpensive, my commission may only be 50 cents, but it's a nice way to support the channel anonymously. Jason Thomas says, how do you set the desktop in Windows 11 to the classic view? I just upgraded. I need help learning it. I'm sure somebody in the chat there can probably direct you to a third-party piece of software. By default, Windows doesn't give you the classic view. You would have to install some third-party software. I don't recommend you do that, because what you're doing is you're putting a crutch in that's only going to be on your version of Windows 11. If you were to ever sit down at any other computer with Windows 11, you'll be lost, because it doesn't have that crutch on there for you to make it look like Windows 10. I strongly advise you to just start using Windows 11 in its default, because it's going to keep moving that way in the future. So the sooner you get adjusted to it, the less you're going to need the reliance of crutches. It's just a matter of repetition. It may seem a little overwhelming right now, but after 2 weeks of using Windows 11 on a regular basis, you won't even realize you'll be used to it. You won't even think about it anymore. On the other hand, there are third-party utilities. If you do want to hold yourself back and keep yourself in the past, you can do that. I strongly suggest you don't. But that's your choice. And if folks in the chat have a recommendation for one of those system theme changers, please put that in the chat. There's a couple that I'm thinking of, and I can't think of their names right now. I don't use them because I don't recommend them. I just think it's an artificial way to hold yourself back. Star Journeying said, I used Macrium Reflect to clone a Samsung NVMe drive to another NVMe drive with the Samsung driver on it. The clone was not bootable. So there's more to this story than what you're describing. There's a number of variables that could make the clone not bootable. And I would have to ask you at least 5 more questions. And then the answers to those questions would likely lead me to asking you 5 more questions. Sometimes in situations like that, I have to see it. But I'm not a fan of Macrium Reflect. I've made no bones about that. There's a reason why I use Acronis in my professional business, and I wouldn't recommend any other cloning tool, because if I won't use it in my business, I won't recommend it. Well, let me rephrase. I might also use something in my personal life I might recommend. But in general, when it comes to PC tools such as cloning software, I don't even consider anything other than Acronis. And it's been that way since I discovered Acronis around 2008. And it just makes my job easier and makes the job more consistent. Like if I went to a customer's place to do a hard drive clone, and set all that up, waited for the clone for however long that takes, and then the clone didn't boot, I'm billing the client by the hour. The client's going to think I don't know what I'm doing. So I can't rely on free utilities. I can't rely on other products that I find aren't as intuitive or reliable as Acronis. Overall, Acronis does offer a tool called Universal Restore. So if you were to clone a drive that doesn't boot when you use Acronis, or heck, I suppose if you used anything like Macrium Reflect and the drive doesn't boot, you could make a USB rescue Universal Restore disk and use Universal Restore to replace the driver. And then that should fix it. Bob R wants me to check my email. Oh, great. Yeah, let me do that. I haven't been doing that lately when I'm live. I just keep forgetting. Let's see. Bob R sent an Amazon gift card for $25. He said, as soon as I thought I viewed all of your videos, I find more. Thanks for what you do. Right on. Well, thank you, Bob. I appreciate that. And $20 from Gary Boyd via PayPal. Thanks to Gary. A shout out to you, my friend. And that's it. Okay, right on. My independence to show you products I'm genuinely interested in, to be able to speak about them openly without any worry of ramifications from a manufacturer. Look, if a manufacturer or their PR company sends you a product for review, they want a good review. If you give them a bad review, they don't want to send you any more stuff. They don't. You'd think they want an honest review, but in most cases, most big companies don't want an honest review. They want you to make a commercial for them. By buying the products with my own money, I'm able to remain independent and keep my integrity first as a technician. So I have nothing to lose by being critical of a product. I don't have to worry about, oh no, this company isn't going to send me more stuff, or this company isn't going to give me a check. Nor would I want that as a viewer. I don't want somebody being a puppet, acting like they're an independent third party with an unbiased review, where they're in the pocket of the company of the product they're doing the review for, essentially making a long commercial. If you watch any of my videos that appear to be commercials, it's because I truly love the product and I can't help but be enthusiastic about it. So I do reach out to some of these companies and ask them if they'll be a sponsor. That's how we have the sponsorship with RoboForm, where there's a year-round discount on RoboForm. That's where we get occasional sponsorship, where we run special campaigns for Acronis at discounted prices once or twice a year. I reach out to them, I ask them. Same holds true for the Windows 10, Windows 11, and Office 2016, 2019, and 2021 product keys that are available via VIP CDK deals. You guys get a 30% discount using the code word CARRY as your coupon code. And those product keys are guaranteed to work. And you don't have to call Microsoft to activate them. They work online over the internet. They activate. But, and I've said this a million times, don't hoard product keys. There's a lot of things that go with product keys, such as theft, that people can brute force different combinations of letters and numbers and crack a product key, which could be the one you bought 2 months ago. Then you go to use it and it says the product key is not valid. And you think the retailer sold you a bad product key when they sold you a good product key, but you sat on it for so long, somebody hacked it. So when you're buying anything at all, you generally have 30 days of customer service, including returns or exchanges. You buy a TV at Best Buy, you leave it in the garage for 2 months, then you take it out of the box and see the screen is cracked. Best Buy is not taking it back. If you absolutely should wait until you're going to need the product before you buy it. So if there are any unexpected problems, you will get the customer service and support. There's too many scammers out there trying to scam their way into getting a free product. And then, of course, on the opposite side, there's a lot of scammers selling fake or stolen Windows product keys. So we're living in a world where people try to take advantage of each other. If you want the best experience you're going to possibly have, whenever you buy anything, you generally have 30 days to return or exchange it. And beyond that, it's your gamble and it's your problem. So that's why I keep year-round discounts on the Windows and Office keys, so people don't have to hoard them for one day when I need it. Because if that one day when you need it is 6 months from now and that key doesn't work, you're not going to get any support, because that's the behavior of a scammer. That's like, that raises a lot of red flags. So in the meantime, I also highly recommend Instant House Call for remote software, but it's really a tool for technicians primarily, and I realize most of you are not technicians. So be aware that you can download free trials of any sponsorship that I do has free trials, fully working free trials, including RoboForm, Acronis, Instant House Call. In the case of Instant House Call, it's a small company, and I think you get a 15-day fully functional free trial. And if you feel like you need more time to decide, you just email Instant House Call and ask them, and they'll, more often than not, they'll just extend that by another 2 weeks, right? I love working with the smaller companies because they're more responsive, they're more flexible, and I think they're working harder. And they, the people you talk to care about the product. They're not just people looking at a clock or being measured over how long you've been on the phone, not over how many people you've helped, which is how most support works. So a shout out to Corey Fruitman over there at Instant House Call for making a fabulous product and giving just outrageous customer support in the remote software world, where it's all big corporations and everything's boilerplate responses for the most part whenever you have a technical question. And the reason I mention it so much is it's probably one of the least popular clickable links I have. Like, the engagement rate on Instant House Call versus RoboForm or Acronis is much lower. And I understand it's more of a niche product, but if you're in the need for remote software, and especially if you're a technician, I don't think there is a tool anywhere near the price of Instant House Call. It's very inexpensive and it's very robust, especially the latest version. And I just encourage you to come up with your own conclusion by downloading the full featured trial and decide for yourself. And the link for that, as well as RoboForm and the Windows and Office keys, are in the notes of practically every video I do, right in the video description. And if you ever run into problems with any of those products, always reach out to them first and give them an opportunity to correct it. And if their correction is unsatisfactory, then reach out to me and let me know. That very rarely, if ever, happens with any of my sponsors. Vincent Moschi contributes $5. Thank you, Vincent. Thank you for supporting the channel. Oystein, joining us from Norway, says, do I have to go to checkout to put in the coupon code? I'm getting it at the original price at VIP CDK deals. Yes, when you go to the checkout, there should be a feature, not a feature, there should be a little box for coupon code in the checkout. And just put in the word carry, and you'll get 30% off. John Lewis said, Acronis sent me info to buy a 3-year subscription for $50 to get clone and backup features only. So no cloud and no antivirus. That's a really good deal. I talked to Acronis about that. I said, a lot of my viewers would love to, like, if you would work with me on this, I could sell hundreds of licenses. I know a lot of you out there don't want the cloud features of the new Acronis software. You won't use them, myself included. I don't use it. And a lot of you have your own antivirus solution and don't want the Acronis antivirus, myself included. You just want the cloning features and the backup features. So Acronis has come out with this invite-only offer. Now, I wasn't going to talk about it, but since you brought it up, I will address that. Yes, it's authentic, it's real, and it's invite only. I don't know why. It makes no sense to me when a company offers a product they don't want to sell, But they said, yeah, the only way you can get that offer is if you're invited. I find that very odd. I know that's a great deal, that you can have a 3-year subscription to Acronis for $50. So you're covered for the next 3 years on every version and every update. But for some reason, they don't want to sell it to anybody they don't invite it to. And I can't wrap my head around why they do that. I love Acronis, I love the product, but sometimes their marketing is, well, I would do it differently. I thought this was a great opportunity to make you guys that offer, because I know many of you would want that. I'm not even sure you could write into them and ask for it. If they don't invite you, you don't get it, is the way it's been told to me. So, yeah, I wasn't even going to talk about it. Samuel says, I submitted a super chat a while ago. Oh, did I miss your super chat, Samuel? Oh, there it is. $5 came in from Samuel Kowalski. He says, hey, Carrie, fantastic review and view today. I always love watching all of your videos. Well, thank you, Samuel. And Captain Blinsky also contributed $5. Thanks, guys. Thanks for supporting the channel. And yeah, all the money that gets contributed via super chat and through memberships goes right back into the channel so I can buy more products to review. And in some cases, like this device here, I will likely send back, get a credit of what I paid for it, and use that money to buy something else that we'll review. Yeah, I see a bunch of you guys going, hey, I want that deal from Acronis. Lou Greenia says, I got the same email from Acronis. Look, you didn't hear this from me, but it's my understanding that if you have the link to the offer, it's not specifically tied to any user. So for example, and I don't want to put anybody under any pressure, but I just want to say this as an example. If you said to Luke Greenia, hey, could you forward me a copy of that email so you'd have the link? I'm pretty sure it's a generic link that you can use. You guys will work that out in email. And you'll have to let me know. I'm pretty sure that it's not specifically, it's the same email that went to everybody that they invited. So obviously they're not going to turn down your money. The link takes you to a portion of the site that you can click on and buy it. Obviously, I'm not getting a commission from this, and I was disappointed that Acronis won't let me offer it. So you guys can work that out amongst yourselves as far as sharing the link. Duncany wants to know how they decide who to invite. I guess it's based on looking at who's already a customer who has a subscription that's going to expire soon. Like my subscription to Acronis will expire in March, combined with the fact that they see you're not using the cloud portion of it during your subscription period. That appears to be the criteria, but I honestly have no idea. I'm just making that up. I mean, I don't know how they decide. Star Journeying said, I would get Acronis without the cloud and antivirus. I use Macrium because it only has cloning and backup imaging features. Yeah. Is that a bit disappointing for a security-related company to know you're not using their cloud? Just being able to see if you're using it, like how much storage space is this user using? 0? I don't think there's a security concern there at all. And again, I'm guessing. I don't know that's how they're deciding. So before you go accusing of a security company spying on you or something, that's all based on me making stuff up. Please, please don't let my answers become rumor and start floating around the internet because of I'm just guessing. I really don't know. But Acronis, they can't look at your data even if they wanted to. They can't look at it any way that RoboForm could look at your data. It's all encrypted based on your on the password you set. And without the password, all they can see is whether or not you're using any space and how much space you're using on their servers. It is their servers. They have a right to know how their space is being used and who's using more and who's using less. That's just required to know if your servers need to be upgraded or not, or if you've got a customer who's abusing your servers, right? I mean, that's not spying. There's nothing wrong with that. And again, I'm only speculating. I really don't know how they decide, folks. Daco contributes $2 and said, Daco enjoys watching Carrie. Well, thank you, Daco. SueCool98 Lawrence contributes $10 via Super Chat. Right on. Thank you so much, SueCool. Now, I have a weird little link in my chat. It says, celebrate the first Super Chat from SueCool. Okay, how do I celebrate that? There's nothing for me to click on. Well, thank you, SueCool, and thank you, Daco. Master Singleton is asking Luke if he can forward the email or post the link in chat. You should be able to click on the link in the email, which will open the browser to that offer page, copy that link and post it in the chat. And that link should work for everybody, but do double check that you're not extending Luke's subscription, that it's actually allowing you to sign in and use it. I don't think they restricted it in that way. Oystein says, let's celebrate with a party. Okay, my place or yours? We'll go to Norway. Might be a long drive, though. Duncany said, yeah, just being speculative, Carrie. I was meaning disappointing that the link is generic, really. I think it is. Again, I'm speculating even on the link itself. I don't think it's user specific, but it could be. Carrie, have you been working out? Nice guns. I like to be active. I've always been very active since I was a teenager, and no, I've not been working out. Any opportunity I have to lift things and move them around, I consider that an opportunity for exercise, and I don't run from it, rather I run towards it. So somebody has a big computer, you know, I lift that sucker up and walk around with it, and yeah. But no, I haven't worked out in a long time. The last time I worked out, I hurt my back really, really bad. And I was so mad at myself that I could have been sitting on the couch with a bag of Doritos watching TV, and my back would have been fine. But instead, I was working out and sublimated a disc, and it was the most profound pain that I can't even describe. But I've learned to have a new empathy for anybody who suffers from back pain. Been there, done that, and it's a very unusual kind of pain that any sort of unexpected action can just randomly set it off. Like, it feels like you're getting tasered. I mean, I've never been tasered, but it's like a shock. So, you know, maybe my back is feeling fine, and I go to pull the refrigerator door open, and it's almost like takes me to my knees. There's no warning. So it's been fine now for a couple of years, but I'm very cautious because once it happens once, it's my understanding it's easier for it to happen in the future. So there are certain things, if they're too heavy, I won't attempt to lift them because my back will be like that for 6 to 8 weeks before it gets better. And it's like tying my shoes or being in the shower, trying to wash my legs, trying to, you know, things where you have to bend over. Holy cow. It's like, at least in that case, I know the pain is coming and I can sort of get ready for it. And then it's almost like holding your breath. Like, how long can I stay bent over? If I got to wash my feet, you know, and I'm in the shower, I've got to bend over and do it quickly because I'm suffering. And then I kind of push myself to see how much I can suffer just because I think it's sort of my own internal endurance of pain. But that kind of pain I can usually override most pain. Yeah. If you have back pain, I have a whole new sympathy for you. Oystein says, I bought a Cronus Trimage 2021 box retail from Amazon and now I own it for life. Yeah, but here's the problem, Oystein. As new technologies come out, new hard drive controllers, for example, or NVMe controllers, a Cronus may not be able to recognize the drive. And then a result of that is the software becomes obsolete. You can't use it. Like, you could have a lifetime license to a Cronus 2008, but it doesn't know what an NVMe drive is. It doesn't know what USB 3.0 is. So likely it wouldn't do you much good to try and run that software today, unless you're just using equipment from 2008 or 2009, maybe even 2010. But after that, anything newer than that, the software probably won't recognize it. So this is also true of different formats. If Microsoft should update the NTFS file system, or better compression ratios so backups don't take up as much space as they improve that compression technology. There's a number of reasons to stay updated, but more importantly for me as a tech, I'm always working on new stuff all the time, whereas home users don't get new stuff that often. So you could probably go a couple of years, 2, 3, maybe even 4 years without any updates to a Cronus and be okay. But I wouldn't. But that's, I have a different need for it. I always have the latest version of a Cronus, and I always have since 2008. I won't go with an outdated or unupdated version of a Cronus because I don't want that to bite me in the butt when I'm working on a client system, building them by the hour. And now I've got a new problem on top of the problem I was hired to do as a result of running an old version of a Cronus. So for me, it's not worth it, especially if you can buy 3 years at $50. That is a screaming deal. I really wish they would let me offer it to you guys so I can make a commission on it. If you guys buy that, I don't make any commission on it. So just so you know, it's an invite-only offer. Again, I don't know why they would offer a product they don't want to sell. But it is what it is. Jeremy Perry with a $15 super chat. Right on. Thanks, Jeremy. And Winston Liu with $2 Canadian. Thanks as always, Winston. Patrick Grusow said, I would think lifetime would include updates. That's not sustainable for a business to continue to pay for the bandwidth, the programming, the engineers, and the employees and the support. They would go out of business. So be careful what you ask for. Malwarebytes was lifetime until they figured out that they were going to go out of business if they maintained lifetime licenses. It was going to put them out of business. So if you want to go shoplift something and the store that you go to ends up closing because they're not turning enough profit and there's too much shoplifting, you'll have no store. If you enjoy a product, the best way to support that product and the ongoing evolution of the product is to pay for it. And I think what a Cronus is asking is not unreasonable. I think it's quite a good value at the retail price. It's not like you got to take out a loan for it. Many people will spend more on dinner than a year's subscription for a Cronus. And which is, how much is your data worth, man? That's up to you to decide. But the minute you start looking for lifetime, you can pretty much forget the history, the future of that company. That company will become history. Support is one of the most expensive parts of running a hardware or software company. And it is very frequently the cause of why tech companies go out of business. Is support will just drive the costs to a point that it makes it unsustainable. So do be careful what you ask for. Now, if you don't like the product and you want to see the company go out of business, buy as many lifetime licenses as you can afford, and it'll just be a matter of time where that company will either have to change course and start charging regularly, or just until they're all spent out from whatever profits they made years ago or months ago, whatever their burn rate is, will determine how much time they have left. Kurt Schlegel with a $10 super chat. Thank you, Kurt. All right, looks like we're going to wrap this up here at the 3-hour mark. We're a little less than 20 minutes away from that. So any final questions for me, be happy to address them, as long as they're appropriate. Jason Wheeler wants to know where I got this keyboard. So that's the second time we've talked about that in today's feed. Everything is that you see on my channel is available at my Amazon store. If you look at the video description in this video, you'll see that there are video notes that tell you where to buy the dock, the Lazy Susan, all that stuff. You'll see there's a link that says everything you see on my channel available at Amazon. Click here. That takes you to my Amazon store. I do think I need to put a link to this keyboard individually in my video notes, since a lot of people are asking about it. And quite frankly, that's why I'm using it, is for it to get that attention.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. It's also $200. I mean, this little keyboard I could buy 10 times with a mouse.
Right.
The mouse is sold separately for another $80 or $90. But it's all made in the USA, and it's very much like a typewriter. It's very elegant looking. It's not the most comfortable keyboard, but it's beautiful, I will say. Al Perez says, I got an offer from Acronis 3 years for $49.99. We were just talking about that, Al. So maybe you're just joining us and you missed that whole discussion. Scott Hallinan says, Carrie, go shout yourself a pizza and a Coke. You've earned it. Okay? That's all I've earned is just a pizza? I'm kidding. Scott, it was Carrie, have you given up on Coke? I haven't seen you drink one in ages. No, it just doesn't quench my thirst. I don't crave it like I used to. I'll usually have a Coke with dinner. Sometimes to kick off my day with a little caffeine, since I'm not a coffee or a tea drinker. I use the little cans now, the little 8-ounce cans, and often I only drink about half of them. It just doesn't satisfy me the way it used to. But I will say, I probably drank enough Coca-Cola in my life for 3 people. So, yeah, I'm not doing it for health reasons or anything. It's just not craving it like I used to. And when I drink it, I'm not getting the same mental dopamine reward I was getting. So, I wouldn't say I've grown out of it. It's taken 45 years, but I finally sort of, I don't know. I still like it. I drink it from time to time, usually with a meal, and that's about it. Oystein provides a link to the keyboard, but the only problem with that link, Oystein, is it's not my link, right? So I won't make a commission if people buy that. At $200, there's probably a $5 commission in that for me. Sarge Tech said, here's something you've earned, Carrie. Our respect. Thank you. Well, thank you, Sarge Tech. I appreciate it. All right, there's about 15 minutes left. If there's any other questions you've asked, I haven't seen them, please, once again, I'll remind you to post your question again. Sometimes my replies are lengthy, and so the chat, as I'm talking, there's still other questions and they fly by, I never see them. Then I finally finish answering the question, and then I'm not even aware of any other questions that came in. So don't be offended if I've missed your question, I just haven't seen it, and feel free to ask again. Tim Teal says, after using the Gigabyte B560MD S3HV2, they don't make them anymore. I'm wondering if you know of an upgraded motherboard to this motherboard for good basic builds for clients. It depends on the need of the client. I wouldn't recommend a board without talking to a client, understanding what their current and future needs are along with their budget. So at this point, I don't have any recommendations without that information. If people in the chat have recommendations for similar boards, you're certainly welcome to offer those to Tim, but I wouldn't do that. Again, as a tech, I wouldn't just generically place a blanket over something, because there will be differences. And whether or not those differences are important depends on the needs of the client, including price. Andy wants to know if Instant House Call is easy to learn in a classroom environment. I think anything is easy to learn in a classroom environment. However, here's a free trial, and some questions can only be answered by you experiencing it. It'll cost you nothing to download and install it. It's completely safe. If you don't like it, you uninstall it. There's also a number of how-to videos on YouTube regarding how to use Instant House Call, but I think it's pretty intuitive if you're familiar with remote software. But if it isn't, there are plenty of YouTube videos out there that can walk you through a number of different features, including Corey Fruitman and I here on this channel walking through more or less the basics of what it does and how to use it. And then you just have to decide for yourself. I can't tell you if a particular meal is going to be good for you. Like, you might not like the taste or the texture or the smell, or you might love it. But until you actually have it and have the experience, that's something you have to tell me. It's not something I can tell you. The Greek says, if Acronis won't honor a lifetime, how can we trust a 3-year license? When it comes to computers, 3 years is a lifetime. I'm not aware of Acronis not honoring a lifetime license. I am not aware that Acronis ever offered a, quote, lifetime. That seems to be words you're putting into somebody's mouth or misinterpreting. Acronis has offered a perpetual license, but a perpetual license doesn't come with support beyond the end of a certain period of time, which is made clear at the time of purchase. Acronis has always abided by their terms of service, whether or not you read them or understood them. They've in no way been deceitful or manipulative in the sale of their product, and nor has Acronis ever, to my knowledge, offered a lifetime supported product. That was Malwarebytes who did that. Malwarebytes reneged on their lifetime offer because they didn't want to go out of business. I'm not aware of any other company that's done that. I'm also not aware of any other company that would be so foolish as to offer a lifetime license. That's a quick way for a company to go out of business. However, if you feel that way about Acronis, if you feel that they're somehow after you, then I strongly recommend you avoid them, along with any other company you feel that way about. Nothing I tell you will change your perception or your sort of, it's like demonizing. And if that's the way you feel about something, it's not worth it to me to try to change your mind. So just buy something else, and then we'll all be happier. Samuel wants to know, where can I buy your merchandise? Go to kerryholzman.com. The Greek says, it was a great stream, Kerry. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. And thanks for joining us here today. Computer Lens says, or asks rather, Kerry, do you think using an Western Digital 8 terabyte hard disk drive is overkill for the D drive? It depends how you use it. I have plenty of customers and friends that will eat up 8 terabytes in a day. That's only something you can determine for yourself if the cost is worth it to you. I don't know if you're going to use it. It's like asking me, is this much the right amount of food to eat? Or is it too much, or is it too little? Depends how hungry you are. I can't answer that question. I'm sorry. You, again, would need to buy a drive and then have experience with it, and then you can tell me that for you, it was a good buy, or for you, in the way that you use it, it was overkill. I can't answer that. You have to answer that. Everybody's needs are different. Everybody's expectations, everybody's budget, and what they need, how much storage they use. Some people use very little storage. Other people consume a ton of storage in no time. So I appreciate the questions. Do understand that some things are very, very, the answers vary a lot based on the individual. So many variables there. Matt Solov says, a big hug to the camera girl.
Thank you. Back at you.
Terry says, thank you for the great videos and reviews. I always look forward to the next video. I hope everyone has a great weekend. Thank you, Terry. Also, I'm always live every Friday, 1 o'clock Phoenix time, which is currently 12 p.m. Pacific time, 3 p.m. Eastern. So you know, without notifications, when to catch me live. If you're a member, not a subscriber, but a member of the channel, of which we've got fewer than 200, then you get special videos where we hang out together every Monday live at 1 o'clock Phoenix time, which is currently 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. Those videos are never made public. It's more of a little community of friends. We get to hang out, kind of give them an idea of what I've got planned for the week. It's sort of like meeting virtually at a bar for a drink. The videos don't really have much agenda than maybe a little behind the scenes information, and the videos are viewed by, you know, a fraction of my regular audience. So the idea that you'll get my attention and we can hang out, it's much more intimate. So there's more interaction between me and every viewer who chooses to participate. I see them all. Whereas when we do these public videos, you've got over 300 people around the world watching. It's impossible to get to everybody. But if you want to be a part of that, down by the subscribe button, if you've subscribed, there should be a join button, and that's where you can learn how to join the membership program. Russell Starr says, my only problem with the members only videos is I'm still at work when they happen. Yeah, unfortunately, I have to pick a time so everybody knows. I can't keep changing the date and time around or people get confused. And we deal with a lot of different time zones. Some people work nights, some people work days, some people, my day is their night or vice versa. Unfortunately, that's not an easy nut for me to crack, other than to say, if you are a member, you can go back and watch those videos. If you're not a member, you won't even know those videos exist. So it sort of takes away the whole incentive of it, which is really to interact with me. But if you are a member, you can always reach out to me in email. Identify yourself as a member, and I'm happy to address any questions you've got. Although I don't have a lot of time to sort of chew the fat, if you will, because I'm always got a million projects going on. So I reserve that for when I'm live on YouTube, and I try to take my time and close out the world around me and all my projects that are waiting for me until I feel like I've satisfied that, like what I'm about to do today. And give as much time as I can during the live video for people to participate if they want to. So that's the philosophy behind it anyway. And Mortant just posted a link to my Amazon shop, which does have the keyboard and all the other products you see me use as well. Thank you for that, Mortant. That same link is in the video description below this video and pretty much every video I ever make. The Greek says, thank you for Mondays. You promised if we were patient, you'd come through for us members. It was worth the wait. You're an honorable man. Well, I appreciate it, the Greek. There's Crazy Vera just joining us. Well, you're just in time to say goodbye, Crazy Vera. Good to see you. All right, guys, I guess that's going to wrap it up. I'm going to go ahead and say thanks for all of the Super Chat contributions, again, to Kurt Schlegel and Winston Liu, Jeremy Perry, Sucool98, Daco, Vincent Machi, Samuel Kowalski, Captain Blinsky, Madi Yoel, Cowboy Rowdy, Planet Cryos, Mark Gaines, Bob R., Kevin Dara, Conleth Byrne, Winston Liu, and of course our good friend Buster. Peter Laycock out there in Scotland, thank you as always. Thank you to Camera Girl for the close-up work today. Thanks to you for watching, and for those who participated in the chat. I appreciate that even more. I love the interaction. If we're not talking back and forth, you might as well watch TV. The whole benefit of YouTube and social media, in my opinion, is the interaction. If you're not interested in the interaction, it's just TV. Low budget TV. Thanks for watching. I'll see you all again very, very soon. Until next time, bye for now.